Thanks for tuning in to High on Horror. I'm Drew.
And I'm John. This episode and every future episode is dedicated to all the horror hounds and smokers out there who want to expand their knowledge of the genre and have a good time.
We got a special one here for you today. We're talking with the one and only Brian Yuzna.
Hell yeah.
Brian is a legend in the industry. He needs no introduction. But if there are some of you out there who are unfamiliar with who he is, he's produced Reanimator, From Beyond, and Dolls. He had a whole run with Stuart Gordon, and they were just incredible movies. And he directed such classics as Bride of Reanimator, The Dentist,
Hell yeah.
Return of the Living Dead 3, and of course, Society. Who doesn't love a good shunting, am I right?
I mean, who doesn't?
We're going to have a career-spanning interview with Brian today, and we're reviewing The Dentist. This will actually be our first two-part episode, as there's just simply way too much to fit into one episode.
And it's fucking mail time. We got some questions to answer that some of you listeners wrote into us.
All that and more today on High on Horror. Interviews, reviews, and the latest news all rolled into one. I'm already lit, but let's start this episode off right by baking. It's time for Strain Wreck, the segment of our show where we discuss which strain we're getting wrecked on this episode, and discuss current events.
Yeah, this is the end of the purple train wreck.
Okay, damn, awesome. I don't even know what the shit was. I just had
it was
but I'm
some of that stuff. It came from Colorado.
Okay, well, though you got a nice little bowl packed over there.
Yeah.
Get it going.
Two-parter. You got to go Hort.
So the trailer for season 3 of Joe Hill's Lock and Key dropped.
Joe Hill, another week of Joe Hill.
Another week of Joe Hill.
Okay,
he's blowing up like his dad did. But the season 3 trailer for Lock and Key dropped, and the season premieres August 10th on Netflix. And I'm not too big a fan on the. I'm not a big fan of the show, honestly. It didn't do the comics justice, and it gets too ridiculous at times. I'm kind of glad to see it end, but the problem is that the trailer looks terrible. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to do the last season. And AMC fucked up Joe Hill's Nosferatu as well. I mean, that show just was not good at all, and that was a really good, weird book. Scott Derrickson seems to be the only one that can really get Joe Hill right. So, I don't know if you Lock and Key fans out there, if you're fans of the show
got into it.
Yeah, if there's any listeners out there that are fans.
There's a lot of AMC shows. I'm not just talking about horror. That it's either, I feel like they're either really good or just, meh.
Yeah, I agree. You haven't watched either, right? You haven't watched Nosferatu. That's what you just said, correct?
No, you told me they messed that up. I was excited to try to watch that.
And you haven't seen Lock and Key, right? Yeah.
Sometimes I heed your advice and stay away stuff like The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I've still never seen it because you told me not to.
No,
and not only you, when I mention it to other people that I haven't seen it because my friend told me not to watch it, they're like, "Oh yeah, listen to him. I wouldn't watch it."
No, it's I appreciate that you hold what I say in such high regard. Not to toot my own horn or nothing like that, but
I mean, you and I kind of have similar tastes, and if it's something that we're both really excited about, and then and you're not like, oh, I didn't like it. Like The Witch, you went, oh, I didn't like it, but you didn't go, oh my God, this movie's horrible. Don't waste your time.
Yeah.
That's different than like I said with The Witch, where I still watched it because you just went, oh, I didn't like it. But you weren't like, oh, it's terrible. You shouldn't even bother watching this.
So you feel that if I do say that,
if you tell me it's something that I was really interested in, and you tell me it's terrible, don't even waste your time, I'm like, okay, I don't feel like you would steer me wrong on that.
I appreciate that, and that's the truth though. I wouldn't, but Lock and Key was a comic book series. I remember collecting the comic books. Oh my God, man, it was a long time ago. I'm not even gonna look it up because I haven't opened a soda in the middle of the.
I know. I was about to say Josh gonna be mad. Got cotton mouth, dog.
But it's about basically this family moves into this house and they find these keys and they
Is there a lock?
The keys go into the back of their heads and they turn the key and it makes them be able to do weird shit and go crazy places and kind of time travel, I guess you'd say, and even bounce around from place to place. You can like turn your one of the ones is like you can turn into a ghost and like leave your body and like kind of like float around. So it's like that. It's like more fantasy than horror.
Okay.
But they kind of did one of those things where they kind of like crammed a bunch of shit from all the comics into like season 1, and then just started making up a bunch of shit that didn't happen in the comics. So the show lost me. But if there's any fans of you out there who like the show, you know. Any fans of Lock and Key out there, the season comes on August 10th. Like
you
I
can
said,
tell Drewy's an idiot.
And hopefully you like it. I'll probably be watching it, even though I'm dreading it a little bit. But I'm not trying to shit on anything. I'm just giving my opinion. But also the poster and trailer for Pearl, starring Mia Goth and directed by Ty West, hit. This is a prequel. This is a prequel to X, and it looks fantastic. I can't wait to see it. It comes out September 16th, and I'll be there to see it just like I was with X. The trailer is available on YouTube. We might even be able to get it up on our Instagram for you all to check out.
You saw X in theaters. I did not. I wish I would have. Actually, I don't feel like it hurt the experience. I'll say
it didn't hurt the experience.
It would have been cool to see it in theaters. But it wasn't one of those movies that you're like, oh, you got to see that in theaters.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I just watched the trailer for Pearl. I'd been waiting for the trailer to come out, and it totally went past me that it already came out. But, yeah, I just watched the trailer now before we recorded, and, yeah, I'm into it. And I really like, she really kept the Pearl voice. Like, you could really hear young Pearl. Like, obviously she played Pearl in X, but I feel like it's just... She made the voice just younger and doesn't sound so tired.
We're looking for that Pearl, X Factor.
Because, yeah, that X Factor. Because Pearl was like 197 at the end of that movie.
She wasn't that old, but she was old enough to blow her hip out from using a shotgun.
But, you know what she wasn't old enough to stop doing was fucking.
Okay. I mean, fair enough.
She was slapping them loose skins, and then our boy almost had his heart attack.
Anyway, something else that I wanted to talk with you about that I forgot about was that on Screenbox, now the story of It, it's the making of the 1990 TV movie with Tim Curry. It's a 2-hour documentary. Our boys Fuzz on the Lens, who were on our show, they did the interviews for it, and it's available on Screenbox now. I have not watched it yet, but I just remembered just now. I was like, there was something I'm supposed to watch this weekend that I just remembered. It's that, and it's if
Tommy Lee Wallace involved in it at all?
I'm not sure, but I know that like all the kids and Tim Curry's on it, like new interviews, like new. It's a whole like 2-hour making of documentary that like, interviews all the people involved. So I'm sure Tommy Lee Wallace is involved because he does cons and shit. But it's on Screenbox. Screenbox is I guess kind of the new competitor for Shudder. They have a lot of movies that Tubi has, but they don't have the commercials. And it's not such a bad streaming service. It's they're just getting off the ground, but it's free for the first month. It's I think $6 after that. So for those of you that want to check out the story of It, get your free subscription in, and you got like a month to watch it.
All right.
Well,
I definitely want to check that out though.
Yeah, I mean it's you have my information, so log in and watch it. You'll probably watch it while you're at work. Yeah. What are you doing at work?
Watching a movie.
All right, man. Well, what do you got going on in horror history?
This week in horror history.
Okay, this week in horror
horror history.
We got phenomenon. The fucking who's that? Phenomenon. Is that the Muppets?
Then I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Dog. Get on my level. Anyway, it's 1985.
Yeah, Phenomena also known as Creepers, starring Jennifer Connelly. This is one of those movies that Argento really went far out with. Like he was really like at his peak of just testing how far he could push shit, like creatively and just strange. And this is just kind of strange. Jennifer Connelly talks to bugs and uses them to essentially help her catch a killer. There's monkeys using straight razors, a deformed kid, Goblin and Iron Maiden music, and Donald Pleasance in a wheelchair. I'm gonna get you baked one day and make you watch it with me. It's a good movie. It's really good. Like you hear, like again, you on paper you go, huh? Watching it you go, huh? But it actually works out.
The other thing is, this is one I haven't got to, but I've always seen, and I was like, Argento and Jennifer Connelly, like that's just not a parent I would ever think would happen. Yeah, so it's been one I've wanted to get to. And then we got The Ruins. I had to do it. The Ruins from 2008.
This is based on the novel of the same name by Scott Smith, and the book was so good that I made my wife read it, and she loved it.
Did you like force her like sit down and read this book?
No, I just she kind of picked it up on her own because she liked the movie so much. She wanted to see. She was asking me about the book after she'd seen the movie. I told her how like it was similar but different. She read it. She loved it. And the book is the movie doesn't do the book justice, but the movie is really good. It is like it's definitely solid.
And 1988, we have The Blob. I never saw the remake. I'm just familiar with the with the OG.
Oh shit! You never saw the 1988 remake?
No,
Oh
I
my
haven't seen
God.
the 88 one. I've only just seen the original.
This is one of the things about having like a friend like you and like having a co-host like you, because there's so many like I get it's kind of every time you introduce somebody to a movie like that, you know, like it's almost like I get to rewatch the movie, and you're an 80s horror fan, so that movie's gonna blow your mind. That's gonna happen. We need to get a review out of that. It's an excellent movie, right up there with The Fly and The Thing. This with The Fly and The Thing are, to me, the three greatest remakes ever. The phone booth, there's a phone booth scene, a scene where a dishwasher gets pulled into the drain. There's so many iconic and awesome scenes in this movie. I thoroughly enjoy watching it when I do watch it, and like I said, we're definitely going to watch that together for sure. And Knowledge Nug, Jack H. Harris was a producer on both the original 1958 film and the remake.
We went to where the 58 one was filmed to see Joe Bob.
Yeah, and then they didn't have any of the fucking Blob merch. They had a whole display of Blob merchandise, and it wasn't up for sale because it was like late and they were closed off because of the Joe Bob thing. And I really had my hand in my pocket, man. I had my wallet in my hand. I was like, let me get one of those damn shirts, yo. Let me get that Blob shirt, but wasn't happening.
And I was trying to think of like good horror remakes, and I thought of one, and I was like, does it count? It's not really. Well, I guess now I think about it, there's two ways you could go with that. I was going to say Dracula. You could say that Dracula was the sequel to Nosferatu. Well, I guess it's still the same thing.
Kind of, yeah.
And I guess they're not really sequels. They're just different interpretations. I'm too high. I was thinking of Hammer Dracula movies.
Yeah, they're kind of. Those are kind of
Well,
like.
I guess we are talking about remakes. Jesus Christ, I'm too high.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like the Dracula, I mean, you could say the one with Bela Lugosi was a remake. The Hammer. But you're still going to take the Blob over both of those?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would, like I can see that's actually good, and I mean Count Yorga, that's also kind of the vampire story, and dude, Blackula's really good. Everybody like laughs at Blackula because it's blaxploitation, and I thought that it was going to be ridiculous, and Blackula's really good. So if you want to look at any of those as all like reboots or reimaginings or remakes, they kind of are in a way. So you kind of have a very good point, like there's like it's kind of like Batman right now, how Ben Affleck's going to be in Aquaman 2, and then you got Robert Pattinson. It's like you kind of have like a lot of like the same characters floating around and shit. You know what I mean? So it's kind
Rob
of
Zombie's Halloween. I would have turned it down, but we couldn't get Spider on the show, so I don't have to worry about being offended.
Yeah, well, I always bring up though, and I've brought it up to you before. A remake that always seems to get overlooked and is just amazing is Willard. Willard with Crispin Glover, man. Like all of these remakes actually outdo. To me, like they outdo the originals, and to me, that's what a remake is. A remake should be something where someone goes, "Hey, we couldn't do this properly back then, but it was a great idea and concept. Let's do it again with the right effects." That's what a remake should be. That's what these movies did. They just took what was there and made it what it could have been back then, what it should have been, and that's why they work. So, like, I don't consider any remake that's like on par with an original or less than an original to be a good remake. It's got to be a good remake. You need to like actually be necessary, and you have to actually improve on things. If you don't, you're just a cash-in, and I'm not a fan of cash-ins. Like the thing, that fucking. Were you just gonna say that?
I was gonna say The Thing. You brought that up, and it's actually ending right behind you. But I was gonna say, is that the best remake? I mean, The Fly's got to be close.
The Thing is probably my favorite remake of all time. Yeah, I mean, because that's just legit one of the greatest movies of all time. One of the, not just horror, but of all time. Great, my favorite Alien movie. Have to be. You know what I mean? So yeah, I would say that's.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't. Oh, yeah. Oh, because
Did you
aliens.
just dethrone Alien? Did I just make the thing
Damn, because
dethrone
when
Alien?
people
for you?
always tell me what's your favorite Alien movie, I don't know why. I never think of The Thing. I always just default to Alien.
Right, I always say Alien or Fire in the Sky, but yeah, when you think of
I guess it really is The Thing.
yeah,
All right. Fuck. Because, like, the Alien's in, like, my top 10, so, I mean, it's right up there with it to me.
yeah, for sure.
But, yeah,
The thing that's
if I
not
had to
fair
only
about-
choose one, yeah, it'd be The Thing.
Well, the thing that's not fair about the thing though is that the thing is horror and sci-fi because of the alien aspect, so it manages to dominate both.
Alien is horror and sci-fi.
It manages, but that's what I'm saying. But it manages to like dominate both. It's not just like what's your favorite sci-fi movie because that's probably the thing too. And what's your favorite horror movie? The Thing. The Thing kind of took that spot for both. Like you know.
Is it that or one of the original trilogy Star Wars movies?
Well, you know, it's
Oh.
sacrilegious to those hardcore.
Well,
Star Wars
I guess
fans out
those.
there, but-
I guess you consider there's more space movies than sci-fi. Well, I mean, they were.
I mean, space movies are sci-fi, bro.
you know,
lay off the peyote.
Damn, but then like Interstellar's up there too.
Yeah.
We're just going off on a tangent. Just
What else? Do we have any other movies this week?
I don't know. No, we just rambling for no reason.
We have a big one.
Did I? Oh shit! God damn! I am so high. Jason Lives, 1986. Actually, on the day this episode comes out.
Today, August 1st. So this will be the 36th anniversary.
Yeah, if you want to know about the 35th anniversary, you can go back and listen to I think it's episode 5.
Yeah, one of the first episodes of our show. Go listen to
You
it.
got Tom McLaughlin, you got CJ Graham, and then we'll throw you a spoiler alert in there. Later, you got Bang.
Vincent Guastafaro, yeah. And then later on down the line, we managed to get Tom Matthews on for a Return of the Living Dead episode. But John and I managed to get our questions in
Oh,
about
for sure.
Jason Lives with him as well. So
When Drew told me we're going to talk to Tom Matthews, I said, well, there's no doubt I'm asking him Friday the 13th Part 6 questions. I don't care if we already covered it.
yeah, I'm not even going to say anything about Jason Lives right now because all I'm going to say is if you want to know what we think about it, go listen to that episode. And I mean, the questions I'm proud of that episode. The questions we asked, the conversations we had. I feel that anybody who likes that movie is going to learn something new. I don't mean to sound cocky, but I mean we kind of dug that one out.
Yeah, it was a good time. I've said, I know it's not your favorite, but it is above the original. You asked me my favorite Friday the 13th movie, period. It's Jason Lives. Halloween, the question's always for most people, most rational people. What's your favorite Halloween besides the original? That's not my caveat with Jason Lives. It's not what's your favorite Friday the 13th after the original. It's just my favorite, period. To me, it's everything Jason should be. It's fun. It's brutal. I mean, you really don't have necessarily the blood in it, but I mean, it's everything I want from a Jason.
I mean, you don't get the
movie.
boobs either, though.
That's fair. You're a dick. Why you gotta bring that up? We got close enough. I'll count it. Close enough.
Close enough, I counted. The movie's so good.
I said that and I don't even know what I mean. What were you saying? The movie's so good?
I was like, the movie's so good that it constitutes as having a legit nude scene, even though there's no nudity. It's so good. I'm going to put a nude scene in.
I don't need it.
In my mind.
All right, we've been rambling on for
You've
way
been
too
rambling
long.
on.
Oh, just me. Okay. Anyway, I think it's time to get on to Puff Puff Ass, the segment of our show where you listeners send us questions through email at highonhorror420 gmail.com and through Instagram, Facebook. I don't think we've, again, ever gotten any from TikTok, but I'll include it anyway. And Twitter at highonhorror420.
Yo, man. Puff, puff, pass.
All right, so Abby from Jefferson City, Missouri asks, what stores do you guys shop at for horror merch? I can never find anything horror and anywhere I go, and mostly resort to online shopping. I also resort to online shopping. There's 3 stores that I go to, and most of the time I walk away without getting anything. Actually, there's 2 stores, FYE and Second and Charles, and most of the time I don't really get anything. There's maybe pop vinyls or a shirt. What about you, John?
Yeah, Second and Charles used to have more horror stuff. Sometimes, like, again, not a lot, but sometimes you can find shit at Goodwill. Like, I found that
Oh,
fucking
yeah.
Jaws game,
Right? Yeah.
and it was missing two pieces that have absolutely nothing to do with the game. It's more that score tracks.
Damn.
And they charged $5, and I looked it up online. It was like $40 online for it brand new. And I'm like, okay, so it's missing these two pieces. I paid $5. Sweet.
That's crazy. I like to go to the Goodwill for VHS tapes because people always get rid of their VHS tapes and they always have them for like 50 cents or $1, and you find some classics in there.
Yeah, I mostly do online shopping. Why can't I think of the place? Not hard. Fright Rags.
Yeah, Fright Rags.
That's probably where I get most of my stuff.
I like Cavity Colors too. Cavity Colors does some good ones.
And our second question here is from Joel on Instagram. Do you like watching movies alone or with people? I'm gonna just continue to sound like an introvert. I like watching them alone.
Oh, really?
Especially if it's a movie theater. Like, I want to go see horror movies in theaters. I'm gonna sound like such a cranky asshole, but I fucking hate going with people, man. Like, shut the fuck up when the movie's on. I don't want to hear your fucking commentary. Like,
Right.
Like, fucking people just talk, like, way too much through horror movies. Like, one of the best experiences I've had, like, in recent memory is back when I had Movie Pass. I went and saw it, the first chapter 1. I saw it 3 times in theaters. The third time I saw it was on Mischief Night, and I was the only person in the theater. And, like, that was a great atmosphere. Like, I like that. I mean, I guess if it's movies I've seen a lot, I like seeing them maybe with other people. But, like,
Okay.
if I don't know, I feel like I'm better solitary, just taking to the information myself.
That's funny because I'm the exact opposite. I like to watch movies that I've seen before when I'm by myself, and when I'm hanging out with people like you or my wife, I like watching new movies because like I'm able to like pay more attention. I'm more in the moment. When I'm by myself, my mind wanders. You know what I mean? And like I just kind of like lose focus. So it's usually good to stick to the ones I've seen before. But then once I've watched a movie that I haven't seen before, with like somebody, then like that movie now becomes something I've seen. So it becomes something that I would put on by myself. But to watch like new movies, I like to watch them with people because I feel that it helps me focus more.
I feel like I focus better.
So
like,
we're opposite. Yeah.
Yeah.
You like to take it all in by yourself. You take it all in.
Yeah.
And
I know, I get you. You funny guy. Funny guy.
let's get on to our review of The Dentist. Brian Yuzna had already worked on the films that I mentioned at the beginning of this episode. By this point, he was no stranger to the horror genre and was a known incredible name by the point of making The Dentist. The Dentist stars Corbin Burnson, who was acting for 20 years before he played Dr. Feinstone in The Dentist. His first role was about 30 years before The Dentist. He was a veteran actor going into this role. Corbin was known for doing a lot of TV movies and shows, and he fucking cranked them fuckers out. He just go to his IMDb page and you'll see a list of things that he was in. Several things a year a lot of the times. Like literally like 5-6 things in 1 year. Movies, TV movies, show episodes. He's had roles in LA Law, Psych, the Major League movies. Those
Fuck
are your
yeah.
shits, the Major League movies. And he also appeared in roles on soap operas like General Hospital and The Young and the Restless. His wife in the film, Brooke, is played by Linda Hoffman, and this is the only horror credit that Brooke has. She didn't act for very long. She got out of the business. She married Bobby Rydell, the pop singer, and apparently lived a nice life. Unfortunately, her husband passed away earlier this year. But there's a fun fact.
Wow.
What?
It's a fun fact, huh?
No, it's not a fun fact. No, that's not what I'm saying. It's not a fun fact that her husband died. That's obviously a shame. The fun fact is that apparently Linda has worked as a cardiac sonographer, which means that she has an associate's degree in a field like cardiovascular technology and echocardiography. I don't know what any of these words mean, but yeah, so apparently she
Deals with the heart.
deals with the heart in the medical field. So that's awesome. And then of course you got Mark Ruffalo.
Mark Ruff.
He has a small role in this movie. You all know who he is. Virginia Keene plays Sarah, the chick with the braces, and she was also in Ticks from 1993
Okay.
with Seth Green. Patty Toy, who was the Asian, she played Karen. She was the Asian nurse. She had a small role in Freddy's Nightmare episode back in the day.
What do you think of Freddy's Nightmare?
Dude, I've been rewatching it on Tubi, and I'll be
meant to
straight
check
with
it
you.
out.
Like, I caught a few episodes back in the day, and I didn't really like think that they were good. It was like bad like TV show acting.
Oh yeah.
But what I didn't remember was I don't think I ever saw it until recently, like for the first time. The first episode of the show, which I did, like I said, just totally blew my mind, is the fucking trial of like Robert Englund on this episode and everything as himself before he becomes Freddy on trial. It shows like the how like he's being like up on trial, and they're trying to convict him and how he gets off and everything, and then they burn him. And I'm like, damn, I always wanted to see that in like a movie, not the Jackie Earl Haley style, but like Robert Englund style, and you get it if you watch the show. So that's pretty fucking cool. But of course, there's Ken Foray from Dawn of the Dead and From Beyond and The Devil's Rejects and a whole lot more. I love that guy, man. Besides Rob Zombie's Halloween, he's been in a lot of great shit.
Damn, that's 2 mentions of Rob.
Well, speaking of shit, he's the guy that Michael Myers takes the coveralls from mid-dump. And then there's Earl Bowen. Me and you know him from a certain movie, certain sci-fi movie we loved growing up. Everything I ever see him in, he's a bad guy.
He's an asshole.
He has 290 credits to his name.
Jeez.
And a lot of voice work on cartoons like Dexter's Laboratory
Okay.
or Dexter's
I don't
Laboratory, however you want to say it. And video
Laboratory?
games like Metal Gear Solid and more. But anyway, my point is this cast is stellar, and they all do a great job. There isn't an amateur in sight. One thing you can't say about this movie is that it's badly acted. John, take us through the movie.
All right, here's the bowl for you.
All right, word.
And The Dentist is a 1996 American slasher movie directed by Brian Yuzna and written by Dennis Paoli, Stuart Gordon, and Charles Finch. And it has a kick-ass score from Alan Howarth.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he always does a good job. And Dr. Alan Feinstone, played by Corbin Burnson, is a dentist with what seems like a pretty successful practice going on. He's a pretty upscale practice as well. It's his wedding anniversary. Alan gets ready for work, and he finds his wife, Brooke, played, as you said, by Linda Hoffman, cheating on him with the pool man, Matt, played by Michael Statovich. And after Matt and Brooke finish the deed, Alan retrieves his pistol. He follows Matt in his car. Now he's at the house of the neighbor, Paula Roberts, a friend of Brooke's, played by Lisa Sims. Alan's spotted by Paula. He makes up some bullshit story that he's having a surprise party for Brooke. And then Alan watches as Matt dicks down the neighbor as well. Like, Jesus Christ, this man's just going house to house, fixing pools and getting laid. Like, he's living life. Anyway, Paula's dog attacks Alan, and he shoots that in self-defense. Like, he fucked that dog up.
He did.
But that dog did fuck his arm up, though.
Yeah.
And then he decides it's time to go to the office. It's a seriously intense start, and we haven't even seen him do any dentistry.
I know. And to me, Dr. Feinstone is like a precursor to Patrick Bateman.
Yeah.
The successful businessman who's super uptight about everything. The way he bitches and complains over a stain that you can't even see on his shirt. And then he bitches about his cufflinks, and he's a miserable bastard. And
I kind of left some of those little small details out, but yeah, that is kind of important.
yeah, and it's not right. You can see how someone married to an asshole like that, from like the female's perspective, would want to break. They'd want to break it off, But my question is, why do women in these situations always fucking downgrade? Like, if you're gonna leave your rich dentist husband, who has this big ass like house and this pool, don't settle for the fucking greasy pool boy. Like, what the fuck? How is like if you're gonna like cheat, like move up, better your life? Like it's down.
I mean, maybe he's doing what she need.
Right. I mean, but anyway, Dr. Feinstone reminds me of Jack Torrance as well, for the reasons that Stephen King didn't like Stanley Kubrick's film, because he seems unstable from the start. And all he needs is that little push to push him over the deep end. He doesn't seem like he's normal, and then he all of a sudden snaps for no reason. Like, you see that Dr. Feinstone is like half a taint hair away from being pushed over that edge of just breaking, and that's all it takes is for him to see, him to see his wife doing the deed, as you put it.
Yeah. And Alan's first appointment, he starts tripping balls, but he's not even doing any drugs. And he hallucinates a child has like rotten teeth and then accidentally stabs him. He fucks that kid's mouth up.
He does, man. It's hard to watch.
And then he tries throwing out lines like he wouldn't sit still. I kept telling him to sit still. And then my favorite, he's like, that kid's spoiled. Nah, bro, you just put a drill right through his gum.
That
like,
kid sat there like a little angel. He didn't do shit wrong.
Yeah, like you had him all calm before you even started. But yeah, like dude, he fucked that kid's mouth up. And the movie makes you so uncomfortable with like the close-ups and them teeth. He ends up down in a lot of these like yellow pills, and he ends up loopy on them yellow johns.
Yeah.
He ends up calling his wife, and he's like talking about his business, like how they first got started. And then I love the part where the call ends, and you just get a cut from her, and then a cut to him. And it just goes with her going asshole and him bitch.
Yeah, the resentment is ever present with those two.
As Detective Gibbs, played by Ken Foree, investigates the death of Paula's dog, Alan sees his second patient, April Rain, who, I mean, that just sounds like a straight porn star.
I swear to God, I thought it does. Amber Rain is a porn star, so that's where it goes. Yeah, April Rain just... I don't even know who Amber Rain... I know the name. I don't even know what she looks like. But April Rain, immediately, I thought... Porn star name or a douche brand?
And played by Krista Sauls. How about her manager, Steve Landers, though? I mean, we got a young-ass Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah, man.
And Mark Ruff. Mark Ruff? He's just being a dick in this movie. And Alan trips out again. He thinks April's his wife.
Out again.
I mean, what else is it? See, he hallucinated, man. He tripping balls.
He is.
But
he's all sweaty.
He got them yellow johns in him now.
Yeah, right.
And he thinks April's his wife, which this does. Things end badly here. He ends up in the hallway undressing her while she's unconscious. He takes off her pantyhose, fondles her, and then he starts choking her. I guess he remembered that she cheated on him.
Yeah.
And April starts to wake up. Alan snaps out of it. He hides her pantyhose. He tells Steve she's still dizzy from the nitrous oxide, and then doesn't let her stay in the room. Like, he tells her, he tells Steve that she's going to need a couple minutes. Name another doctor that would tell someone to just carry someone from a room that hasn't fully woken up.
Yeah, right.
And then, I mean, Steve puts two and two together. He returns and punches Alan and threatens him with a lawsuit. So Alan ends the day early. He sends his staff and patients home, including Sarah, a teenage girl who wants to have her braces removed, played by Virginia Keena. Keena? Whatever, close enough. Sarah's the person I feel the worst for in this whole movie. All she wanted was her braces off and to throw a party.
Yeah. I just want to say real quick, it's funny that you said that about, like naming another hospital where like they just have you carry someone out. And like that's
Dexter.
That's kind of that kind of happened to me, and I was pissed, man. And like, my wife and I were pissed because my son Abel, he was having like all of a sudden he was like crying like hysterically that his hip hurt, and like I thought he was joking, and he wasn't. He was like legit, like he couldn't put pressure on it. He was like, we freaked out. So like, it was late at night. My wife took him to one of those Med Express places, and they gave him an X-ray. They gave him an X-ray and everything, and the X-ray came back, and these motherfuckers told her that like told my wife, that she needs to go to another hospital because they don't know how to read children's X-rays.
And why did they do it?
Right, and like, how are you working in the? How is it different from? I don't understand. Like, isn't like the anatomy the anatomy? I don't know.
Sure,
but
there's probably like some nuanced differences in like reading it. I'm sure.
But why would you have done it anyway? And if they didn't even have wheelchairs, so my wife legitimately ended up like, having to carry my son out of the fucking Med Express back to the car. And I just thought like that was just unprofessional. I hate those quick
Med Express.
I hate those quick medical places that are just they fucking suck. I remember I had a sore throat one time, and this chick legit pulled out a book and was looking up my symptoms to diagnose me. So if you can, just go to a real doctor. That's my point. Anyway, back to the movie. The fantasy part where he's like you were just talking about, where he's like fantasizing about his wife, and it kind of the whole patient rape thing is when I officially thought like, oh brother, you're done. Like there ain't no helping you. And that's the point of no return when you see how out of control he's become in just a matter of hours. And
you didn't think it was when he stabbed the fuck out of the kid?
I think he was losing it, but I mean, like you're legit, like no, because the thing was he snapped out of it and was like having to trying to pull her panty liners up for her, you know what I mean? And like that was like you're literally so fucked up that you're like in the middle of trying to rape somebody right now, like that's you know what I mean? But I feel that when the dog died, that's when the film like officially became a slasher film. Like it's definitely an unconventional slasher film, but there's definitely some slashing and some dental torture. So I mean, like I feel like the few killings that happen, starting with the dog, is what makes this movie a slasher film.
Yeah, there's I guess the body count's not that big, but I mean he does torture a lot of people.
Yeah.
But Alan has a new opera theme room at his practice, and he has his wife Brooke come to meet him. After sedating her under the premise of cleaning her teeth, he pulls out her teeth, cuts out her tongue. Like, wouldn't it be weird if, like, somebody, like, they're supposed to be going to dinner, and then he's just like, let me clean your teeth, and he's going to sedate you. Like, that's just weird. Like, I could see maybe, like, sitting in the chair just to see, like, how it feels and, like, get an idea for it, but, like, to actually get a cleaning? Like,
I don't like how it's like a romantic thing too. Like, yeah, you know, we'll make a night of it. Come have a time. Let me clean your teeth. Like, fuck you. It's like, no, that's not an idea of fun for me.
Bruh.
Right, it's not an idea of fun for
I
me.
don't think she's going to say
on.
that, though.
She might not call him brah, you know, but put a movie on and get me some food, man. Like, don't worry about cleaning my teeth. I don't. That ain't romantic. Keep your
That's not what I want to do on my anniversary.
Keep your fingers out my mouth.
Detective Gibb and his partner Detective Sunshine, I like that's just his name, that's the only name you get, is played by Tony Noakes, arrives at Alan's house the next morning to ask him questions. After the police leave, Matt discovers Brooke, who's still alive but sedated, and Alan stabs Matt to death. Like, yeah, she definitely all gummy at this point. And Sarah and Paula are waiting at Alan. Waiting for Alan at his practice. And Alan sees Paula first. Which makes Sarah more upset. Like, I can understand why the only person I feel bad for. Like, she's just suffering in silence. She just wants her goddamn braces off.
I know.
It's been 2 goddamn years. Yeah. She just keeps getting bumped and bumped. So now Sarah's more upset. Paula's saying how good of a job Matt does, and Alan don't want to hear that shit. Because he fucks her molar up. Like,
Tommy Doyle gonna fuck you up. That's what you just reminded me of.
Tell me he don't though. Like, he just fucking takes that drill, just hollers that motherfucker.
Oh yeah,
out.
it's the sound, man. Of course, you know that's the worst part. That drilling sound. Oh my god, yeah.
And so yeah, he just destroys that. His assistant Jessica, played by Molly Hagan, questions what he's doing, and he snaps out of it again. Just like he just trips out for like 4 to 5 minutes at a time, and then he's good. Other than that, he's an okay guy. Alan asks Jessica to finish up for him, but after he discovers, Alan asks Jessica to finish for him, but after he discovers she sent Paula home, he fires Jessica. And when she pulls out April's pantyhose and threatens to expose him, Alan kills her.
The body count's rising.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I like that earlier in the movie, when she had found the pantyhose, because she's the one that found them.
Yeah.
She shows it to the other assistant. I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but we'll get to it. She just like blows it off, like whatever. She's like, you want me to go ask him about it? And she's like, no.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You're talking about the nurse that I spoke with earlier. The nurse that I spoke to about earlier. God damn,
I was like, damn, you
Patty
talked to
Toy.
her?
You're talking about Patty Toy Karen?
Yeah.
Her name's Patty Toy. Yeah, she played Karen. That's who you're referring to.
So back at the police station, Detective Sunshine discovers the bullet pulled from Paula's dog only matches one gun in the area. I think it only matched, I think they said 50 or something like that sold in the last year, but there was only one in the area. And I mean, that gun was nice looking. So I could see Alan probably dropped some money on it.
Yeah, but I mean, he had money.
Yeah.
You know?
So it matches, surprise, Alan's gun, which we already knew. IRS agent Marvin Goldman, as you said, played by Earl Bowen. As most might know as the OG Terminator, as the doctor.
Dr. Silberman.
Yeah, Dr. Silberman dicking that too, like you said. He uses Alan's tax problems as leverage. He extorts a free dental exam and a payoff. Here's my thing. Like, I said the dude's a scumbag. But, why would you want to have somebody clean your teeth that you are just constantly pissing off? Like, why? Like, that doesn't sound good.
I know, I feel you.
Yeah, like I said, the tax guy, like most of the tax guys, is a scumbag. Like I said,
Surprise, the tax guy's a scumbag.
I said I feel bad for Sarah. Who I don't feel bad for what is about to happen next to him is Marvin. Instead of getting a teeth cleaning, Alan tortures him. Dude, he just has that... the thing that bothers me is, it's funny, like, is that thing that holds their mouth open.
That Marilyn Manson mouth crank going, yeah.
So he gets tortured. Detectives Sunshine and Gibb drive to the Feinstein house to question Alan. After finding Matt's body by the pool, they break into the house and find mutilated Brooke tied to the bed but still alive. It's going to be a rough time for her for a little bit. When Alan was pulling her teeth out, just the faces he was making.
I know, man.
Later, Alan's other dental assistant, Karen, finds Marvin still in the dental chair, and Alan attacks her and then kills her by injecting her with a needle full of air to her jugular vein. That bubble effect was pretty sweet looking.
Yeah, it was.
Like, you just saw, like, travel under the skin.
Yeah.
I like how he told her, calm down. You'll be dead in a matter of seconds. Like, dude, Corbin Burnson, like I said, like, I grew up watching, like, Major League movies, like you mentioned, and he was always, like, the nerdy, like, preppy guy, and then just, like, he's still that in this movie, but, like, he's got obviously a hell of an edge to him.
Right.
And Alan ends up finally removing Sarah's braces. Oh, yeah, because she ended up getting bumped for the tax guy as well when he came in. She got bumped again. But she finally gets her braces off, and Alan starts imagining her teeth rotting. He pulls his gun. She escapes by smacking him with the dental light. The only person that really ever fought back.
Yeah.
Dude, she swung that thing and smacked the shit out of him.
Yeah, right?
And then she was hiding in one of the dental rooms. It looked like she was hiding behind, like, the nitrous tanks.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. Yeah, I believe that's what it was.
And she finds a blood-soaked Marvin who attacks Alan. And when Alan recaptures her, Sarah hysterically promises... I thought this was, like, the one thing that made me laugh, where she's, like, promising she'll brush her teeth 3 times a day and never eat candy. And it keeps going back and forth between her and Alan. And then, like, Alan just goes... He just leaves. He's just like, okay, I believe you. And just, like, leaves her. And then the 2 detectives arrive. They rescue Saren, but Alan's already out that bitch. He was Candy. I liked her.
Yeah.
The office manager, played by Jan Hogue.
Yeah.
She's sitting there crying hysterically. She's like, his wife... Such a good family. Yeah. And, like, she's just, like, going through his life, and then it gets to the point where she's like, and a teacher. And they're like, that was a key point. Because she mentions that Alan is a teacher as well through, like, all of her hysterical crying.
Yeah.
They follow Alan to the university. Alan still has his gun, and he maniacally instructs all the students to pull all of the teeth out of their patients. You imagine being in there?
Extract them all or some shit like that. Like, dude.
Yeah, and he just keeps like screaming, like he gets more of that Jack Torrance as it goes on. He pulls out the strap again, and he threatens them at gunpoint. Now, he hallucinates one of the dental students as Matt and shoots him in the arm. The detectives burst into the room, but Alan uses a hostage to escape. And my thing is, like, Alan, like, let her go at the door. He should have kept her.
Yeah, right.
At that point, you don't got no leverage, dog. Damn, learn about kidnapping.
Gotta get better kidnapping skills, like from Borat.
Yeah. Eventually, he wanders into the auditorium where an opera singer is practicing. It was a weird scene, but I really like it.
Yeah, agreed. It was definitely like it was weird. It was, but
it was enough that it wasn't thrown in your face about how much he loves opera. There was just little subtle scenes.
Yep.
So when this happens, you're never like, why does he care about an opera singer? Like, you just know, like, this dude is really into opera.
Yep.
So he's enchanted by this opera singer. as he watches her from behind, and he reaches out to touch her, and she transforms into Brooke, who laughs at him. Defeated, he falls to his knees, and he's arrested by the detectives. And now I guess this is kind of where we start with the movie.
Yeah, the wraparound story, so to speak.
Alan's now in a psychiatric hospital. He's carted off to his regular dentist appointment. The dentist working on him is revealed to be toothless wife Brooke, who violently fucks his mouth up. Anyway, I love this movie. The hate this movie got was so ridiculous. Brian J. Dillard of AllMovie has one of the worst takes I've heard of this.
Okay.
He called it a subpar horror comedy about dental anxiety that, quote, adds nothing new to the mix besides over-the-top images of mouths being desecrated and queasy allusions to the alleged filthiness of oral sex, end quote. What do you mean? There was like one oral sex scene in the beginning, and it was part of like a dream.
And it wasn't all that graphic at all.
Yeah. And like, I mean, there was really like, there's nothing in that I went, oh yeah, this is about blowjobs. Like, what? I'm not even sure where he got it.
I don't think that it was yeah, and I don't think it was the act either. I'm pretty sure that if she was giving him a handy or anything, that he would still have been pissed off. So I don't really think it's not oral sex specific.
And the teeth decay to me was like, everything's crumbling around him, so it's decaying. It doesn't have anything to do with oral sex.
Yeah, agreed.
Anyway, I think Homeboy was reading more into the movie than what was there. For me, and I brought this up with Brian Yuzna, but revisiting the movie today, it feels like kind of a precursor to like Saw and Hostel in terms of the gore and such, like really close and like. But I mean, there are times where you have that, but then there's times where you don't have it. It has like that Texas Chainsaw where you think you saw more than what you saw.
Yeah, totally.
And it kind of leaves you with a uneasy feeling watching it several times throughout the movie. And Corbin Burnson really takes this role seriously, and it shows somebody else easily could have made this such a campy and just over-the-top cheese. But, I mean, he really committed to it, and, I mean, it made the movie better for it. The score, as I said, great as well. I'd give it a 7.8 out of 10.
Yeah, well, TV Guide wrote a film, quote, a film that might have given the Marquis de Sade a few chuckles. The Dentist is a splatter film awash in auteur violence, end quote. And I think that sums it up great. This is the cruelest movie that Yuzna did. And it's kind of like when we talked to Lucky McKee about how he was at a dark point in his life when he made The Woman, and that's why that movie is so dark and harsh and cruel compared to his other films.
Yeah. I
wonder if that's the case with Yuzna. I'll bring that up to him. But anyway, what I like about this movie the most is that it's told from Feinstein's point of view. So who knows how much of this actually happened? It happened the way he says or remembers.
Psycho, like you brought up.
Yeah, like his wife might not have even given Sloppy Toppy. She might be completely innocent, and this guy just snapped, or maybe it was a hug. Who knows? You can't trust a crazy person to tell you the unbiased truth or truth at all. And everything we see is his version of how it went down, which means jack shit. But I grew up watching this movie. This and Dr. Giggles from '92 were big for me. The Dentist is the superior film, though. Again, I agree with your 7.8, and if I did it like that, I would probably give it the same, but I'm just rounding it to 8 because I just go by 0.5, so 8 for me. Yeah, 8 for me. Great fucking movie, though, and we had to do something for Brian that wasn't the common review, and I feel like The Dentist gets overlooked a lot, but yet everybody our age, when you bring up The Dentist, they're like, oh my god, I remember that movie.
And
so
it's funny. It's
time to give it its due. Let's talk about The Dentist. It's one of those
movies that even like casually people that aren't horror fans have at least like have vague memories of it that are our age. Like, oh yeah, I remember something about that movie.
Definitely, absolutely. Well, let me just say now to you listeners out there that there will be no burn and learn this episode because Brian's gonna fill you in with enough knowledge for that.
Not just on the movie, just like horror movies as a whole, and some of the history, the business. I mean, a lot of knowledge not to say we're above people, but like we have a pretty good knowledge of horror history. I mean, we have a segment of it.
Yeah.
But he really gives us some horror history, just like that I've never even heard of. So it's amazing.
We've never had a guest that's been a fan of horror this long, like that's been there through the ages to talk about how things have changed. So it's a really informative interview. He's gonna give you enough knowledge for that. But trust me, next week when we conclude with Brian Yuzna and we finish with part 2, we're gonna have a ton of knowledge nugs next episode.
All right, let's talk to him.
Our guest today is a legend in the business. He's produced such films as Reanimator, Dolls, and From Beyond, and directed cult favorites Society, Bride of Reanimator, The Dentist, and Return of the Living Dead. All the movies we've been talking about on this episode. He's the guy that said, there's always this idea that really great horror movies don't show the more horrific stuff. Baloney! I like it when they just go places you would never guess. Welcome, Brian Yuzna. Thank you for being on High on Horror.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to start this interview off proper. Before we just started recording, you were asking us about being stoned. So I want to ask you, do you now or have you ever smoked cannabis?
Well, I certainly did throughout my youth and into middle age. I must say that now that it's legal, somehow it's not because it's legal, but I don't know. It just doesn't. It doesn't thrill me the way it used to. But I keep trying. This is some I've trimmed myself, so I do keep trying.
Oh, that's awesome.
So do you just prefer the stuff that you grow yourself?
No, I just must say it doesn't. It doesn't do that much for me now. It did when I was younger, for sure. I think now I drink more than I smoke.
Do you feel when you used to that it helped you with the creative process?
I might have convinced myself of that. I used to do it never did anything for me when I had to work, though. I certainly, when I started making movies, of course, by the time I started making movies, I was already in my 30s. So I had, hippie 20s. I was one of those people who turned on, tuned in, and dropped out in the 60s and into the 70s. And then when the revolution didn't happen, I had to get a job, but I had not prepared myself for that because I thought, what's the point? So then I tried a whole bunch of different stuff. And when I finally ended up getting into movies, that was such a big commitment. And I already had, I think 3 or 2 kids by then. I moved to LA and I worked on movies. I was always on the set, but I would never drink or get high or do anything when I was working. But then I did find it at least pleasant when I would work on scripts or do brainstorming type of stuff. That would happen in the evenings after my kids were put down. And I'd have the writers come over or whoever I was working with, and this would be late at night. And then I would have maybe a sip of cognac and a little bit of pot to, and it did seem like it loosened you up. It's kind of like having a drink at a party. It kind of makes you just a little looser, a little less self-conscious. But these days, I went to a barbecue a couple nights ago, and people my age, they buy them pre-rolled,
Mm-hmm.
But that's part of. They put out the drinks and they put out the pot and the cigars. I like to smoke cigars, and so
I'm trying to go to that
seems
party.
like now it's it's not what it used to be when it was edgy and illegal. Now it's just so normal. I guess is it legal in Delaware or not?
Medically.
Yeah. But so you know what I'm talking about. The
Yeah.
difference in California is that it's just legal, whatever, and they get upset because the pot business isn't growing enough, and it's just like every other ridiculous industry, and it was kind of amazing when they first made it legal. I forget when it was, a few years ago, right? And boom, man, every billboard, every corner had a pot store. That was kind of hard to get used to. And when they legalized it, it's like nothing changed. And you kind of wonder, what was the point of all this, right? What was the point of throwing people in jail and
Exactly.
all this kind of stuff when it really made no difference? It's just another bad habit to have.
And Drew and I are lovers fans of Lovecraft like yourself. What is it about Lovecraft that you feel drawn to?
Well, what drew me to Lovecraft was Reanimator. Stuart Gordon. When I met Stuart, I was looking for a director. I wanted to make a Hollywood movie, and I had raised some money for it. And a friend told me to go see Stuart in Chicago, where he had been directing theater for about 10, 12 years, I guess. And we got along great. I really admired what he did in the theater. And I said I wanted to make a horror movie, and he said he had a couple ideas, and one of them was Reanimator. And he already had like a 50-page TV pilot script. Now, this was 84. So this is when, there wasn't much cable. There was HBO and Cinemax. And then there was VHS. And there was no streaming, of course. We didn't even have fax machines when we made Reanimator. But it was going to be for like ABC or NBC or something. And I was all into it. I liked the idea of the guy, bringing somebody back to life. That's my kind of idea of a good time. And I told him that if he wanted to develop it into a feature, then I was on board. And we did that within 1 year, actually, from meeting Stuart. Exactly 1 year later, we were shooting. It was, we kind of just expanded the story with Dennis Paoli, who was the writer, and added, the original pilot ended with Halsey getting killed, which now is the end of the first act. And then, so we added Dr. Hill and the Headless. So we added a villain. And then that, gave us a lot more movie, a lot more story. And so once I had been familiar with Lovecraft, when I was growing up, I was always a horror fan. And I began being a horror fan with comic books. When I was a little kid, I lived in Latin America. I didn't live in the United States till I was in high school, but I was living in Central America. And I remember I think the very first comic book I got was a horror comic. And I was like 5 years old or something. And I bought tons of comic books when I was a kid. And, back then you always kept one in your back pocket because you didn't have a cell phone, or you didn't have, all you had was your comic book when you wanted to kill some time, and you'd read it over and over again. And I did, of course, the superhero stuff. Back then it was all DC. But I also bought the horror comics, and I'm not sure if they were the EC comics, the Tales from the Crypt and that,
The
or
Vault
not.
of Horror and all that.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it was that because this would have been mid-50s, or if it was just other kinds of horror. But it was horror. It was always some demon or ghost, and spouses were always killing each other, and there was always some heads getting chopped off. How those horror comics are, and spooky. And I think maybe that was my first touch with horror. And then the other thing was ghost stories. And where I lived, we didn't have TV when I was a kid, right? And because this was, say, Panama, and when I was in grammar school, I think we got TV in Panama maybe when I was in the middle of my elementary school or something. So there was, and when it came, it was very minor. We'd have it 3 hours a night. And so we didn't have TV. We did get to go to the movies on Sunday, the kids' shows. But at night, we would all be outside on the corner, all the kids playing games and stuff when it got night. And there would always be some stories about their grandfather told them or their uncle told them about the grandmother that was buried and came crawling out of the grave, that kind of monkey's paw type stuff. And that, when you're a kid and you're talking about that, it's really creepy. I don't know. I mean, today you look and you say the story's always the same, big deal, right? But when you're a kid, it seems so scary. Death seems so scary. And then to have people walking around that crawled out of the grave is real scary. So there was that. I think when I got into the Boy Scouts, I remember hearing some big time ghost stories. And we'd go to camp in the jungle, and it was a Catholic troop. I was brought up Catholic, and some seminarian would take care of us, and we'd be out under the thatch roof common area in the woods, and man, he'd scare the bejesus out of you. It's really scary. You didn't want to go back to your tent. And I think ghost stories always appealed to me. And then when I was very young, we used to go to the movies on Sundays. There would be a kids' matinee, and we would walk. My family lived in, say, in the country. We lived in the city, but we didn't live like on a military base or anything. My dad wasn't military. I did get to go to school on the base or on the canal zone. But when I went home to Spanish-speaking kids. And but on Sunday we would walk to see. It would be one or two movies, some trailers, and some kind of RKO serials like Rocket Man or Batman or Dick Tracy or Captain Marvel was my favorite because he seemed to have all the best powers. He just had to say Shazam and boom, he was a hero. Didn't have to have any gimmicks, And we'd see, who knows what movie it would be. It could be anything. It could be Abbott Costello. We'd see Three Stooges stuff. But one time they showed The Creature with the Atom Brain. And that scared me. I didn't sleep for nights. And that's basically a zombie movie with touches of Frankenstein. It was basically zombies, except they were controlled by someone with radio waves or something. I don't know if you've seen it, but I think it's 55 or 56, 57, something like that. And I always wish that I had been infected by my first horror movie had been something, much more famous. But that's the one that got me. And then after that, it was I think it was The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, which just had some great monsters in it. And then as I got a little older, I learned to have fun watching horror movies. And I think the first horror movie I ever went to that I realized that, man, this is just fun was The House on Haunted Hill with Vincent Price. And on that one, they even had, Yeah, the theater I went to had two huge kind of cigarette boxes on the side of the screen advertising, I don't know if it was either Marlboro or Kent. And from twice during the movie, from behind the box, a skeleton would come floating over. They had a wire rigged, and this, I guess, plastic skeleton or something just came floating over the audience. And that was thrilling, you know. But by the second time, all the boys, there's all boys probably in the audience, you know, they all took out their comic books and started slapping it and jumping on the legs. You know, it was just a good time, you know, and that kind of got me into horror as fun, that it's a fun thing to do. And of course, I saw lots of horror movies. All the you know, all the, like, you know, The Tingler and 13 Ghosts and those. But then also that's when Hammer started, and that was scary as shit because they added color, blood, and breasts. And boy, you know, horror for me, it's always been tied in with death and sex. And I think when you're a kid, the sex part is almost as disturbing as the death part, you know. So I think in the Seven Voyages of Sinbad, one of the scenes that just, you know, nightmared me was the woman that jumps in. The magician puts her in a big urn with a snake, and then they breaks it, and she comes out as a woman that is a snake, you know, and that was really disturbing. But I think for prepubescent kids, sex is very disturbing, you know. And then, of course, I got into, you know, Psycho was another huge movie for me. That was scary as hell. And then I got into the fun ones in junior high, like Corman's Pit and the Pendulum and Tales of Terror and all those. But so I just started going to all the horror movies.
Well, so that's awesome that's how early you got started in the horror genre, like just getting experience to it and liking it and adapting to it. Well, so let me ask you, where do you stand now? What's your thoughts on modern horror films, like A24 films? Do you watch modern horror, or are you a fan or not a fan?
Not a lot. Not a lot. I go to festivals. I guess sometimes at festivals, and I'll watch movies of the people I meet there, you know. And I watch a lot of, you know, I'll watch stuff. But I must say it might be like pot for me, you know. The older I get, the less I am thrilled by it. I think I'm just really impatient now, and I've got to. It's gotta. I used to, you know, when I was a kid, every movie was fascinating. You know, every movie, and I went a lot. I used to go to the movies a lot because you didn't have anything on TV. You know, today you've got your laptop or your smartphone, you can watch shit out the wazoo, you know. But when I was growing up, you didn't have that. So you had to go to the movie to see something. And I went constantly. But and I found everything fascinating. But now when I watch movies, I'm almost always bored and irritated from the beginning. I just feel like I've already seen it, you know. And I see, and plus movies today are just so message forward, you know. It's kind of like I just get tired of everything having to be about something
Pushing
else.
agendas, yep.
You know, it's like you can't just have a horror movie because it's fun to be scared and see a monster. It's got to really be about racism or sexism or some political, cultural thing. And that, to me, I think any movie that you make is going to reflect the times you're in, so there'll be some social meaning to it. But I'm not real, you know, it doesn't do much for me to make that the point of the movie. I think you see that with Night of the Living Dead. Today, I mean, my opinion is Night of the Living Dead is like the beginning of modern horror, of this time of horror. That was the turning point. And it was, even when it came out, it was surprising that there was this black guy that ended up being the guy that survived. That you just didn't see that in the movies back then. If there was a black guy in a movie, it would be, it'd have to be, you know, Sidney Poitier, in Lilies of the Field, or Guess Who's Coming for Dinner, which are all message forward movies. But with this, it was surprising, but it didn't mean anything to the movie. And George Romero has said that he didn't do the casting for any reason, but that's who he found. And of course, the guy gets killed at the end too by the redneck sheriffs. But I don't think it was message forward. In fact, I forget the name of the character. He was wrong all the way through the movie. If he hadn't been such an idiot and not, gone and hid in the basement, which is what the racist redneck wanted to do, they all would have survived like he did. He's the one that said, "No, we got to stay upstairs." And everybody said, "Got to go in the basement." Well, he ended up hiding in the basement and living. So anyway, I think that movie is just plain scary and really good. And one reason it is because it doesn't have the traditional horror movie kind of pattern of having this real slow beginning of the first act until you'll have a little stinger for the prologue, and then it takes you a while to get anywhere. But with Night of the Living Dead, it was like they go to the cemetery. You're 2 minutes in, they're at the grave, and the brother is teasing his sister because that guy in the cemetery is going to get her. And by God, he does go after her, and boom, you're into Zombieville immediately. And that was like fantastic. There's none of the baloney in there. So, but I think after Day of the Dead, Romero, I think he just started believing that he was a social commentator a little too much. And I think with Day of the Dead, I think Tom Savini's stuff is great in Day of the Dead, but I feel like there's a little, kind of conscious, like this is not just a horror movie. And that I've always kind of been irritated by that, where when people say, "Oh, it's not just a horror movie." I said, what's wrong with just being a horror movie? What's wrong with that? I don't know.
Amen.
It's like, oh, it's just a roller coaster. What, your roller coaster has to have some other purpose than just be a roller coaster?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on some of that. There's a lot of times I feel like too many horror movies try to be slow burns, and then in the end you're like, no, you just bored me for an hour and a half.
It's hard to say. I think that, it's funny in the 80s, and there were some great horror movies in the 70s that I don't even remember seeing in the 70s. But when I saw them later, I was, I was impressed by them. It's something like, I think there's one called Let's Scare Jessica to Death. Yeah. I never saw that movie when it came out, but when I see it, if I see it now, I really appreciate it. There's just an honesty to those movies back then, or movies like Squirm, or there was a bunch of stuff in the 70s that were really good, and that was pre VHS era, and that's when I got into the movie business at the beginning of the video revolution, and that meant that there was a new medium, there was a new distribution option for movies. They didn't have to go to the theaters. And when I would, during the 60s and 70s, the horror movies usually went to the drive-ins. When I was in high school, I lived in Georgia in high school. We used to go to the drive-in because it was, it's the it's the cliche of the drive-in, which was true. It's that you could hide people in the trunk, and the cars back then had big trunks, and or you could go when it was like that you paid for the carload, and you could carry beer, which was illegal. Of course, you're underage and everything, so you bring beer, and you just go out and spend the evening at the drive-in and see a couple movies, more or less. But it was, that's where I saw, the Sergio Leone, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and a lot of the British horror movies like the Skull, and those kinds of things, or the Elvis Presley movies. They were always at the drive-in. But and then during the 70s, the drive-ins were still around, and B movies went to the drive-ins, or there were college screenings. So when I was in college in the late 60s, you could go see all these movies. And back then I went to see all the like French New Wave stuff and the Fellini. And they just, they had, I think they projected 16 millimeter films. New Line Cinema, who produced Nightmare on Elm Street, they started as a 16 millimeter catalog. And that meant it went to like PTA groups, to clubs, to, veterans groups, to schools, to colleges. There was a whole circuit for that. Now, once video started, boom, it all went to video. And video changed the financing of movies. And I was really lucky that when I got into movies, it was the video time. And you could, there was all these sources of financing or sources of recoupment. Financing is never a problem with making movies if you can show your investors how they're going to get their money back. And back then with video, you actually could. You weren't going to lose everything. Everybody was buying a VCR, and then all these mom and pop stores are popping up to rent videos. And because to buy them, it was like $80. Only porn was worth that. And so then the studios, they saw video as a threat to them, the way they saw TV in the 50s. And so they wouldn't let any of their movies out on video. Well, that meant all the B movies got to be in the stores. And the means of projection was your own VCR. It was a great time. You see I think the movies of the 80s really reflect that, especially the genre movies, because genre movies don't have to be that good. If you make a raunchy comedy, if you make a sexy comedy, you can get away with it being, a B movie. And with horror fans are famously kind of accepting of kind of bad movies. I know I'm a horror fan because I'm a movie fan. But if it's a rom-com, if it's an adventure movie, a drama, it has to be a good movie. I don't want to watch it unless it's good. But with a horror movie, I'll watch the crap. I'll watch a bad horror movie, and I'll get a kick out of it. What I don't like is the message first. I don't like it when it's too serious. I just prefer it if it's exploitative. And I think what's changed back then in the 80s, you had to have professionals involved with your movie. You couldn't make a movie without going to a laboratory. The director of photography had to know how to load these cameras. He had to know what kind of film to get. He had to know how to expose it. He'd have a light meter all over. He had to know all this science of light and film. And then you had to have, a whole bunch of electricians and stuff and grits to get the power to the lights. And you needed a lab. And then you needed, an editor that knew how to cut film. and then you had to go to the lab and you had to do the mix, the sound mix. You had to go to a whole studio for that. Well, today you can get After Effects, and you get Final Cut Pro, and you can cut it yourself on your video. You don't need any professionals involved. You can just do it yourself on your laptop or your iPhone or whatever. It's like, and so I think, and you can do it so much cheaper because you hardly need a crew. You could shoot in this room where you are with an iPhone, but back then you had to put tons of light in. You had to design a movie, and it was hard to go on location. And if you did, and look, if you went on location, your camera and everything was so big, it couldn't move around, hard to light in there. And, most of the time we'd just be on a set, we'd be on a stage, and there would be nothing there but darkness. And then you had to add the light, you had to add the walls, you had to add everything. And so every shot you took, you had to light it, and that meant you had to make decisions. Today, you can go shoot a movie in your house, and you can shoot it without having to light it. So you don't even have to know about putting on a key light, a fill light, a backlight. You don't have to do any, you don't have to actually make decisions about what the lighting's going to be. You can just go with what's there, like a documentary. So I think that changes things. The fact that, back in the, before the digital era, you had to, everything that you put on the screen, you had to make a decision about. And I think that communicates. Now, wow, for no money, you can make a movie, and that's great, except that you find that everybody wants to be the singer-songwriter. It's like before Bob Dylan, nobody was a singer-songwriter. Elvis didn't write his own songs, for Christ's sakes. Nobody did. They were songwriters and they were singers. Each had their own thing. But now with but then after Dylan, it was like, wow, you're not an artist unless you write your own songs. And so people start, today they buy the songs and then they tweak it to themselves and they put their name on it, just like directors do. Directors have to be a director, writer, producer, cinematographer, editor, because that makes them a real artist. But what happens is that they're maybe not that good at any of those things. And maybe, you're better off having really strong collaborators. And then on top of it, horror has been accepted now in the mainstream because it's made so much money. It was similar back in the 80s, 70s, early 80s. If you wanted to see gore, you had to see a horror movie. But then the action movies started co-opting gore with Rocky and Rambo, and all of a sudden you start seeing horror in Sylvester Stallone movies and in kickboxing movies, and you get that whole, and so then horror movies kind of lost the monopoly on that, and I think that the horror movies are such a staple now, especially now. I think it's come full circle from Night of the Living Dead with The Walking Dead. It's just hugely mainstream. Well, I must say I don't care much for mainstream horror. That doesn't do it for me. That's not what I like about horror. I don't particularly want to see a soap opera that happens to have zombies in it, and the head getting blown up every now and again, or somebody asking someone to kill them because they're going to be a zombie, or whatever the tropes are.
Yeah, that sounds like a very good summary of Walking Dead, pretty much. And you've had a bunch of different roles yourself in the industry. Do you have a favorite role that you prefer doing over others?
Well, I started as a producer, and I never had any training for film, so I didn't have. I never went to a class or anything. I got books back then. I'd get books, but I started from the point of view of I thought that if I could make money making movies, that would be the most fun. I tried a lot of different ways to make money, and and so I started with the idea of earning a living making movies. I never started with the idea that I had some important kind of artistic or social thing to say. And I wanted to make movies like the ones I liked. I think everybody does. I liked the Roger Corman movies, you know. So I put, you know, I liked on the Poe ones where he would pour different paints and have them kind of like roll, you know, kind of move around um, on black to do his credits. It was so colorful, and that's why I had a credit sequence for Reanimator instead of just putting it on black or something. I wanted a colorful credit sequence the way the Corman Poe movies were, and like on with William Castle, I love and Night of the Living Dead and other ones of his. I loved how we would have a face come out on the screen, a floating head talking to you, you know, on Night of the Living Dead. And and I thought that was so great. So on Bride of Reanimator, I had Dr. Hill's head talk to the audience at the beginning, except in color with blood. And it was directly because of William Castle, you know. And I think we all do that with everything. We try to kind of reproduce in our own way what thrilled us at one time. And so I forgot your question.
Oh, John asked if what your favorite role was in the industry.
Oh, so I started as a producer, and I thought it was my movie. Well, then I found out the director got all the credit. And I thought, shit, I want the credit too. You know, I was a producer because someone told me that the producer was the boss and he made the most money. And to be honest, I always wanted to be the boss and I always wanted to make the most money. So I thought, well, then I should be a producer. But then I saw, well, the director not only gets all the credit, he gets to make all these diddly little decisions, you know, and the producer gets to make big decisions. But, you know, so then I wanted to try directing. And then you naturally get into the storytelling. I don't like the writing part of it that much, but I like the inventing the story part a lot. But I'm not a guy who enjoys sitting by himself and working on a script. Although I do it a lot, but mostly I do that when I'm rewriting a script to make a movie out of. You have to understand that most of the movies I've ever made or been involved in had the deal. The money was there. The deal was there before we had the movie. So even with The Dentist, which is what you just brought up, I had made Return of the Living Dead 3 for Trimark. Mark Amin was the head of it. And it turned out real well, and I still think it's one of the best zombie movies out there.
Agreed.
And he said, let's make another movie. And I said, what do you want to make? Because by then I knew real well I could care. You got to make the movie that whoever's paying for it wants to make. Not what I've never been good at like going hat in hand and pitching. I just feel like, what do you want to have? And I'll do it, and I'll try. And of course, I'll get my jollies out doing it. So he said he had an idea called The Dentist, which honestly I thought was a really stupid idea. I thought this is going to be Dr. Giggles, you know. And he had a poster already. It had some artwork done of like a drill in the foreground, I think, with a drop of blood, and somebody in a chair, you know, a girl in a chair under the light. And I said, great idea, let's do it. And 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 he and so that was the beginning of it. He had the money. He wanted the movie called The Dentist, and I could make it for him. And with the movie I made for him before was Return of the Living Dead 3. On that one, I produced and directed it and developed the script based on the title, because they had just bought all they had done was bought the right to make a sequel, to make a movie called Return of the Living Dead 3. That's what they had the right to. So then I interviewed many writers and found one, John Penny, who I really liked his pitch, because I wanted the movie to have the a reanimated character be the main character, and that was and so his idea fit into that. He had a Romeo and Juliet type of idea, and so and I produced and directed it. So that means that I got to develop the script with the writer. I got to have all the storyboards done, and I was directing it, and so I was also producing. So that meant I created a corporation. They put the money in, and then I spend the money. So I got to write the checks or sign the checks. Well, that to me is the best, because then if you're not signing the checks, things can happen that you don't know about. You can be a director, and the production can be not necessarily supporting you. And there can be a lot of politics and a lot of pettiness and not even petty stuff, but real kind of differences of direction on a movie. And it can be very frustrating if you are directing, even if you're directing and writing, and even if you're directing and writing and producing, if you don't ultimately have your hand on the wheel, if you don't have the wheel in your hands, because if you do, then you can take all your resources and put them where you think they're needed, and the only thing that you're responsible for is delivering whatever it was you promised, and also coming in under budget or on budget. That you can't be irresponsible. And there's ways to control a budget, but they don't exist if you don't have your fingers right there, in the bank account. And that's not very common. And with the dentist, when we decided to do that, I did the same process. I interviewed a whole bunch of writers. Unfortunately, my regular writers, the people I'd worked with before, came up with much weirder things. They took the dentist and they would go a bit far afield. And Mark Amin of Trimark had insisted to me, well, he had made it clear. He said, I don't want any weirds. I don't want any sci-fi, any kind of fantastical stuff. I want the movie to be based in a dental chair and to just exploit the idea that when we go to the dentist, it's scary. And so we went through a lot of different pitches, different writers, and couldn't find anything. And then Trimark had also brought in Stuart Gordon, wanting to make some movies with him. And Stuart said, I'm game, what have you got? And he looked at the list of their projects and he said, I like The Dentist. And they said, well, that one already has a director. And at that time I was producing as well and developing the script. And he said, I'll be happy to just write it. And so he and Dennis came up with a pitch, a short treatment, and it was great. It was about a very fastidious, clean freak dentist with a trophy wife in Beverly Hills who sees that his wife is being unfaithful with the sleazy pool guy. And and he kills him. And then he goes to work. And you don't want to be his patient
You
that
do not.
morning. So that's the gimmick, and it's a great one. Of course, so then it really was fantastic. I mean, it was all, but then we had, they went from treatment to script. And when they went to script, um, the script didn't work as well as the treatment did. This is very common. I mean, often the treatments aren't that good, and you're not really convinced, but you kind of go, well, the script is going to make it good. Well, in this case, the treatment was fantastic. It was great. But when it went to script, it wasn't quite as delightful. And and so we had a big meeting, and a creative thing where all the executives, there's creative executives from Trimark and Stuart and myself, and they put forth what they said, this 3 hours time period, we want it to take place over 2 days at least, and we need to open it up a little bit, and then Stuart didn't want to do that, and so then they said, well, we're just going to have to get another writer. And at that point, I was needing to work, and I was making, trying to remember, maybe I had just made the Necronomicon. And the Necronomicon, the episode that Christoph Gans did, was it was a tryout for him to direct this live action version of an anime called Crime Freeman. And so it worked. And Necronomicon was a Japanese-French co-production. And so it worked, and now we were able to do Crime Freeman. We were going to shoot it in Vancouver, and it was a much bigger budget than what I had been used to. And so then I told Trimark that I said, listen, I really need to go do this other movie, and you're welcome, go ahead and do what you want with the dentist. And if you want to get a different producer and director, that's fine. I will work for you. I'll work off whatever you've already paid me, because they had been paying me to develop it. So I said, hey, I'll do a different movie, and I don't feel like you're not getting your money's worth. So then I went to Vancouver for a year to make Crime Freeman. And when I came back, I really needed a job. And by that time, and I called up Mark Amin. And by that time, he had another producer on it, Pierre David, who was kind of famous for doing these. He's a Montreal-based producer that has done a ton of movies, had his own company, and was involved in Platoon, which won an Academy Award. But he mainly was famous for doing these, I guess you'd call them like profession movies, The Nurse, The Babysitter, those kind of movies, usually with a woman in jeopardy almost, but not quite, not quite Hallmark, but more, a little harder hitting than that. And so he was going to do it up in Montreal, and they'd cut the budget way down. But then Mark Amin said, hey, look, if you want to do it, and I needed a job because I was just out of work. He said, if you want to do it, I will, I'll bring it down. I'll bring it back to LA to shoot, and you can direct it, and Pierre can produce it. And so I went for it, but I got but of course the script wasn't finished. And so it took a lot of, it was a real adventure, kind of preparing the movie while trying to figure out the script. And of course, there was a lot of, I don't know if it was stressful, but to me, kind of comedic elements to directing under Pierre David, because he had his way, and a lot of his controls over the production I felt were absurd. But in the long run, I think the movie was better for his involvement.
And do you feel like the movie was kind of like a precursor to some of the stuff we would see from like Saw and Hostel, maybe like a decade later? Because I feel like watching The Dentist, I get those kind of like squeamish feelings that I would get like watching some of those scenes from Saw and movies like that.
Maybe I liked Saw. I think James Wan was really an original guy, and I like Saw in a way that maybe I don't like some modern stuff, because it was just such a grabber at the beginning.
Yeah.
The first scene just really gets you. But I wonder if it's so much. Maybe the dentist definitely leans in that territory. It does sort of kind of get to the periphery of torture porn, I think. And I think a lot of the Saw had that bit of a torture porn thing, but it was more like a puzzle.
Yeah.
That's what I liked about Saw, is everything was kind of a puzzle. I'm not a fan of torture porn. I mean, that's a demeaning term anyway, but I'm not big on seeing how much, representing how much pain someone can have inflicted on them. It just doesn't really get me off, And people say, well, what about Chainsaw Massacre? The Chainsaw Massacre doesn't have much gore or pain. It's kind of like an art movie. It's just the title makes you think it's really, really explicit. It really isn't. And I think Texas Chainsaw is a great movie. One of the great 70s movies. And I do like horror, that includes painful, gory type stuff. But I'm not real big when that's the main thing, like Wolf Creek, for example, or Hostel. It's a genre of itself.
They're too cruel.
It is a genre.
They're too cruel.
And it's a subgenre.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a subgenre, and it's not one of the subgenres that I'm particularly attracted to. That's all.
Right.
It's just, but I can see that the dentist certainly did that. And also the dentist was something that I had never done before, which was a body count. I never made movies where somebody got killed, they usually came back.
Right, right.
I never did like a serial killer or a slasher film, a Halloween type thing. And I think Halloween is great, and I really like Friday the 13th because they're just so well done for what they are. But I personally, when Nightmare on Elm Street came out, when I first saw that appealed to me much more because it had a fantasy element. It had that dream surrealist type of fantasy element, and it was truly macabre, especially at the beginning of the first one. It really, I think that scene in the alleyway when you first see Freddy and his arms are stretching out. I mean, I know they're using like sticks. It's crude, but it just seems like a real nightmare. There's nothing real about it, and I like that. But it really gives you that. To me, it was like, wow, that's horror. And I really felt like, I really loved Nightmare on Elm Street when it first came. That movie when it came out, and I watched all the rest of them because they became just kind of a wisecracking Freddy showcasing what the rubber guys could do this year. What weird makeup and mechanical effects can they do with methacellulose and foam latex now. And I thought that was one of the best things about the 80s. But I'm not, the slasher movies, I liked the first ones, but I didn't go see all of them, My Bloody Birthday, I don't know.
Happy Birthday to Me, My Bloody Valentine. You kind of merged two together there, but I get your point.
I mean, there's so many. There was so many.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they all followed the same pattern. And that wasn't what I went to see so much. I would go see the remake of The Blob.
Oh, hell yeah.
Or I would see something that had some fantasy element or, Pumpkinhead or something that that was, I don't know, that had a little fantasy element to it. I like that part of horror.
Absolutely. And so that's what I wanted to bring up next to follow John's question was, he had brought up Hostel and how like kind of boundary pushing the dentist was. Now, was that because of the studio putting those restrictions on you and saying this has to be a serious movie, or was it just something you wanted to do intentionally? Because this movie is crueler than anything you've worked on before. Like, I think it's the cruelest movie you've done. So was that due to the studio saying like no bullshit, or was that you saying like, hey, I'm gonna not goof around on this one and just get straight to the point?
Maybe. But I think maybe I guess maybe I never used pain for its entertainment value. I mean, I did use pain, but I think is it different when a zombie's doing it? I don't know. I mean, you think of Return of the Living Dead 3 or even with, I don't know, Bride of Reanimator or something. I think I was always more drawn towards the fantastical elements, and I liked the horror suit that it was in. With The Dentist, of course, it was based on the idea that everything had to be, it was a killing. This guy's going to kill all these people. Now, the new script by Charles Finch, his rewrite, added a bunch of great elements that I liked. At first, I had a hard time thinking I could make that movie, because I didn't know really how to do just a body count movie, just how to kill a bunch of people. But what let me in was the idea, and this was in the original script, which was that the dentist is off his rocker, and so we're seeing things from his point of view. Now that gives you a lot of license to have fun with things that are uncomfortable. And with Charles Finch's version, he added the wraparound, the book ending of the padded cell. So he had the dentist introducing the story. And that was, for me, that gave me a lot of room, because now we have an unreliable narrator. We don't know what happened. This is some crazy guy in a mental hospital telling you a story. So now, whatever you do is you're already, the format of it is an unreliable narrator. And then for that scene, I did the scene so that he's even turning on lights that are invisible and using instruments that are invisible. That to me is on the level of Society, in the scene in Society, the first scene after the prologue of Society, when Billy's in his psychiatrist's office and he bites the apple and sees all the worms. Well, of course, the idea is that you could bite it. You could say, this is a beautiful apple. He's saying, I have a feeling that beneath the surface there's something terrible going on. That's his paranoia. And I think we've all felt it. And when he bites the apple, there's a worm in it. It's rotten, right? That can happen. But I put a ton of worms, 100 worms, which is totally ridiculous. But I think that moment just says, hey, whatever you're going to see in this movie, you got to understand it may kind of go a little extreme, a little surrealistic. And I think with the dentist, when he turns on, he goes, he acts like he's talking to you and you're in a chair, but there's nobody there, just padded cells. I think that to me was really made me feel comfortable because I thought, okay, let's see what this guy's, let's make it clear that this is like somebody's crazy story. And then Charles Finch got rid of the him killing the pool guy, and I didn't like that because I felt like, oh, it's one of those, oh, it's all a dream type of thing. I hate that it's all nothing matters because it was a dream and it didn't really happen. But it was the only way to make it take 2 days. But you wanted to have that scene where he says, "Show them what good teeth you have." That's fucking hilarious, right? That's Stewart and Dennis.
Right.
That's them. That's the animator, and they wouldn't let me use somebody who wasn't white, right? So I just tried to make them as oily and disgusting as I could, and the and then he shoots him, but he's only imagining. That's just what he wanted.
Right.
And so then we know that he hates his wife. And so now we get to go overnight and get to have this whole interplay with him trying to get revenge on his wife. And that brought us into the second day. It wasn't just a flatly kill the wife, kill the patient, boom, boom, boom. It was, he's losing it. And I thought it worked well. I did. I felt like ultimately that change was for the better. And then there was a series of characters that come in who, for the most part, were all in the original script. But so he didn't kill the wife, so we had him kill a dog, And we had him go to the neighbor and see that the pool guy is screwing the neighbor too. This motherfucker. He's not just doing his wife, but he's doing the girl, their friend. And then he kills the dog, and then Charles Finch did that, and he brought in the cops, Ken Foray and his partner. And so there we were, then we have the cops. So you have a little cutaway with the cops, which helps a little bit. And then the other really great thing Charles Finch added, was the idea that this dentist had theme rooms, that he had special rooms for each operatory. And that was something that wasn't in it that I thought was just great, because now all of a sudden this guy's got a character and he's killing people, but he loves opera. I can get behind that. This guy's got some saving grace. And of course, the scene where he takes advantage of the would-be starlet with the gas, which was in the first script. That was hard to do for me, because I'm not big on watching a rape scene or, a movie about someone dying of a disease, unless it's an alien or, it has to be some fantastical kind of element there to get you some distance from it. But in here, he's actually violating this young girl, but by intercutting his wife, for me, it kind of gave me the out, and I could kind of make him. You could see him. I didn't completely. I can't say that I sympathize with the dentist, but in a way I do. I'm not totally. I mean, he did terrible things, but no, and he's going mad, And so there's so I think with the theme rooms and then the opera room, and he asks his wife to come, and you see that they both hate each other. And then, of course, the big scene is where he pulls out all her teeth. And Corbin Burnson is the one that pulled the thing off. You know, he just did a terrific job. But but I feel like that scene in the opera room, operatory, um, I feel like it implies a whole lot more than it shows. You know, that definitely is one of those places where it really makes you uncomfortable. And he mostly, I think, the part that is terrible is not on her. It's seeing his face as he's pulling out the tooth, and he's going. I mean, that's Corbin, right? It's the guy. It's the bad guy. It's not watching. You know, it's not. You're not. The fun isn't so much in watching the poor wife. It's in watching him. And then, of course, after she's got all this makeup effects, you know, then you're into, you know, the kind of body horror that's kind of fun, you know, later.
And Corbin Burnson, I loved him as playing Roger Dorn in the Major League movies. Major League movies are why I'm a Cleveland baseball fan, which is sad itself. They never win. But this is not like a normal
Cleveland Guardians.
Yes,
Cleveland
the
Guardians. Not Indians. Guardians.
Now, was he somebody you had in mind for this role? Because this is like a departure at the time for something like he was known for.
No, this was, you know, I did a couple of these Silent Night, Deadly Night movies, which were super cheap. And they were just based on picking a name from a list. So on one of them, we had Maud Adams, who was a Bond girl. And on another one, we had Mickey Rooney, who at one time was the biggest star in the world. And there's a certain price that you can pay, and you go down the list until somebody takes it. And that's because the company, the distributor, needs a name for the box, for the VHS box. And back then, that's how they did it. And so they just need a name on there, and you need to get one of the names that fits. It's like I said, they're movie deals that just need the movie. It doesn't matter the script, and it doesn't matter even the rest of the cast hardly. But you got to have that name. You know, you got to have something to sell. And I think with the dentist, actually, the casting was phenomenal. I thought. I mean, hey, we had the Hulk before he was the Hulk. In that
Mark
movie,
Ruffalo, yeah, Mark
know?
Ruff.
And he was just a date. He was like 2 days. I remember watching him and going, I thought, God, this guy's really great. And he had that little dippy little part of being the agent, but God, he did it well. I couldn't believe it. And what's the name of the? I'm trying to remember the name of some of the the hygienist and the X-ray technician. They were all, and the tax guy. What was the name of the corrupt IRS guy?
Yeah, he just wanted free dental work.
Everybody in that movie, all the little, were very good, and maybe because it was easier to get people because it pays nothing, so it's easier to get them. I think when you one have a part that's very easy to understand, they don't have to deal with any kind of sci-fi fantasy type of scene that they don't quite get. Getting people to play in society, that's hard because they read that script. They're kind of like, I don't know, right? But you do the dentist. Oh, you're going to play the hygienist in a dental office, and the dentist going crazy. Okay, I get that.
Simple enough.
I think that, yeah, and I think that it all makes sense, and so they'll do it because actors want to act. They want to be they want to just act. It's not a career thing. It's just that's what they do. Unfortunately, most of the movies I make are maybe too weird for normal actors, and so I don't get them. And it doesn't pay if you pay a ton. of course, you can get anything. But with Corbin, he was one of the people. As a matter of fact, um, I spoke with Chevy Chase's agent to be
Wow.
the dentist. That would be a totally
That'd be an interesting choice.
um, and I certainly thought that Bruce Campbell would be a great
Oh
dentist,
yeah.
right? But I forget with him whether he would. I think maybe the money was too low for him. I don't know. But with Corbin, um, I didn't really know his stuff. I never watched L.A. Law. I did see Major League, um, but but then they showed me some of his reel, and he played. There was one thing he did in specific. It played like a bit, but like a bad father, a bad stepfather, you know, like a bad husband or something. And it was effective. And I thought, well, yeah, he can do the dentist then. What I didn't, what I didn't um, predict or pre-see was how just what a I mean, he almost in his scenes we like collaborated about how to stage him. He always had an idea, and as a matter of fact, he went on to direct movies. He's directed movies and stuff. He's like a professional movie guy. There's no, it's like Mickey Rooney when he was at Silent Night, Deadly Night 5. I was producing that. I wrote it. I co-wrote it and produced it, and didn't direct it. And it was like a nothing budget movie. And Mickey Rooney had his own Winnebago. You had to rent his Winnebago, and so that would be his dressing room, and you had to pay his assistant, who happened to sort of have the same stature that Mickey Rooney had, so he would be his photo double, and he would do all the photo doubling for the lighting, and Mickey would just go out for the shot. So he would sit back in his Winnebago and mostly listen to the races. He had the racing sheet,
Right.
um, and listen to the races on the radio. And I would sit out there where he was so I could chat with him. And he was a great guy. And while at one point he told me, he says, you know what the most important movie being shot in Hollywood today is? I said, what? And he said, this movie, because I'm in it. And I thought, man, that's the attitude, right? And he went on the Tonight Show and pimped for our movie.
That's awesome.
I mean, come on, we didn't have any budget for promotion whatsoever. This was a cheap video release, but he's in the movie. By God, it's big shit, you know. And you kind of go, yeah. And I think that's kind of the way Corbin is. Corbin grew up in a movie family, and I find a lot of actors that come from showbiz families, they don't have such a precious kind of idea of what acting is, or
Yeah.
you know, it's not so precious. They'll just do anything. It's like Corbin always reminded me of Lionel Barrymore. I don't know if you're familiar with the Barrymore family, John
Oh yeah.
Barrymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Drew is like a granddaughter of John Barrymore.
Hmm.
But Lionel Barrymore always impressed me because of the genre movies he did. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen Devil Doll.
Oh, of course.
You
Yeah.
know, he's in Devil, the old black and white one. But he's in all these goofy horror movies. Besides being a huge actor, he's also a big mainstream studio actor. And when you see them do stuff that I like dolls coming to life, for Christ's sakes, and play it to the nth, or playing it in drag, and you kind of go, there's a kind of actor, they're just impressive because they'll just do anything. They just get it all together. And I think that that's to me what Corbin is. And I think it's because he came from an acting family. For him, acting is like the business, is what you do. And doing a little movie, a big movie, who knows? You just keep going. And I think you really see it in the dentist. He really makes it work. And also, when we were location scouting, we didn't even have an ending to that movie.
Oh wow.
And it was the director of photography that found the came to me and said, "Hey, we were looking at a dental school because, of course, the original script didn't have any dental school because it all ended before lunch. It started with killing the pool boy and it ended at lunch. It was like a 3 hour trajectory for the story. We have to make it take 2 days." And it ended with the little girl, the cops coming in and saving the little girl with the braces. So when we hit that point, what are we going to do? And Charles Finch had added this thing where he goes to he teaches at the dental college and starts going crazy and seeing his victims and stuff. And so that was in there, but it was a bit undeveloped. It was a bit over the top. There was like, to make it more intense, he sees 6 people who were his wife. It was like that kind of thing, just more. And, but it was there. And so I took out the multiple thing, but we needed an ending. And while we were checking out the film school, I think it was at Pasadena College campus, and the DP actually, who had already been, I was very insecure about the opera stuff. And he said, "Oh no, I'm a big opera fan." And he gave me all these areas to listen to so I could choose the music for the opera. And then he found this, he had wandered into this auditorium when we were looking at the dental school room where they have all the chairs and stuff. And we went down there and he said, "Hey, the movie should end here." And we were like days away from shooting. And so we added the bit where the dentist runs away and then sees the opera singer singing and imagines it's his wife and, kind of falls apart. But it kind of ends with I felt like it was very, I liked the guy because he was just someone who was like kind of disappointed in love.
Yeah.
Like most of us. He was just
Definitely.
disappointed.
Definitely.
It just had a drill in his hand when he was. And all the killings, I didn't know how to do those. So what I did is I went and watched. Of course, I've seen every Hitchcock movie because that's what you do, right? And I just picked out all these Hitchcock scenes of killings and just sort of copied them.
Okay.
So like when she's getting, she's getting strangled and she drops the syringe. That's Dial M for
Oh,
Murder.
nice. Okay.
And so is she, remember she has the scissors, and so is the scene where he gets the pool boy. The pool boy comes out and finds Brooke with her weird mouth, and he backs up, and that's also from Dial M for Murder, where the killer the killer shows up behind her, but you run the camera all array around him, and then you show the knife come out. So you didn't even know you were there. Yeah, but that's Hitchcock. And some of the stuff is it's not. It was due to not having resources, which sometimes is what makes things stylish. So, for example, to kill the pool boy, we didn't have time to shoot that when we were at the location. And so we were at a warehouse next to the train tracks. There's a lot of trains there, and where we shot all the interiors, and and we needed to show the dentist killing the pool boy. We already had the ending where he threw the bloody knife in the water, and we needed to have him stabbing him, and we couldn't go back. And so if I went outside, they could give me a little piece of grass next to the sidewalk, the concrete that could be like the pool. And but you couldn't shoot in any direction because there were trains and then there was a warehouse. So I had to put the camera up top. And so then I just shot the whole thing, and with him stabbing, and I forget whether the which one of the actors was throwing the blood, but it was all just from above because I didn't have a set. Well, better for that. It looks like a stylish
Absolutely.
scene, but really it was because we didn't have anything to shoot, and I think it's very often the case. We did shoot another killing, and that's the only time of any movie I've ever done where I didn't include a killing in the final cut, and that was we had him kill the housekeeper,
Oh, okay.
and I forget why. So for some reason, it just didn't fit the flow of the movie. And I always tell people if they're going to be in a movie, a horror movie, I say, "Well, do you get killed or do you kill him?" If they do need to do, they can get cut out of the movie. I said, just make sure they kill you, then they won't cut you out. But in this case, she was cut out.
Well, did Corbin Burnson, did he have any rituals that you are aware of? Like, because when I think of the film, what I mean by rituals is like acting rituals. Because the pool scene that we had talked about earlier, where he's it's like his fantasy where he's has the pool boy at gunpoint and he's kind of holding his wife's head down. You know what I mean? In that scene, he really fucking turns it on, and I'm like, I wondered, like, was he turning up loud music or screaming at himself in a mirror in a room before filming that, or was he just like totally normal and then just turned it on?
Not at all. He's been an actor since he was a kid. I think. He doesn't do any. It's not that serious. This isn't. He's not doing. I don't think he's doing. He's not extreme that way.
Okay.
He's not. He doesn't. He might need a moment every now and again, like a lot of actors. It's just like a baseball player can't just step out onto the plate. He's got to kind of take a couple of swings, or even if the pitcher kind of interrupts his wind up, the batter will say, "Hey, I need to tell the umpire to give him a moment because he doesn't want to be caught off guard." Actors very often just need to be quiet for a minute before they do something. But Corbin, I don't think anything he did in that movie was really stretching him at all. I think he just has that. I was surprised because when I did that movie with him, I'd end up in a situation where I go, man, what are we going to do? We don't have much time. And say, hey, we could do this, could put the camera there. And he would have it all. He would have an idea for it. He wasn't like just going, tell me what to do, or he wasn't like, oh, what's my motivation? There's none of that. But he would get wound up while he was doing it, and he would get very wound up and kind of get a bit out of control.
Okay.
So we definitely, at the end, I put myself in the movie. We had once again, I had to put the camera up top and follow him being thrown into a dental chair at the very end. And I was the technician, And so he kind of got pissed off at me because he felt like I was a little rough. And I told him, I remember telling him I thought he deserved it. The last thing about the dentist that probably should be mentioned is that a lot of it, it was a no budget kind of thing movie. So it had these real limits. But I had just spent a year with Christoph Gans, who was directing Crying Freeman that I was producing. And Christoph is French, of course, and he was a critic before he directed. His first directing was Necronomicon, his first feature was Crying Freeman. And I produced many first-time directors, quite a few. And when you produce, when you produce a director, you almost have to be able to get inside of how they think, to be able to know where you're going with the production. And on most directors that I recall, I could pretty much predict how they would cover a scene. After working with them a little while, if we had a scene, I could almost have a pretty good idea of how they're going to, what shots they're going to use to cover it. But with Christoph, I never could. I mean, never. And it was because he was a cineast. He was a French critic. And so he just watched 10 movies a day. And, when he would go back to Paris every time, we had to go to the Laserdisc store and he'd fill up his suitcases with Laserdiscs, He was just crazy watching movies all the time. And everything he did, every scene he had, would be referencing some other movies I didn't know about. And I never had worked with anybody like that. Stuart Gordon was a theatrical type of director. He wanted the least cinema type stuff because he was focusing on the stuff he was so good at. But with Christoph, it was totally a different world. And everything, lots of camera tricks. If you watch the first episode in Necronomicon, which was Christoph's episode, there's more in-camera tricks there using, oversized coins to bounce down steps so that they look, big, so they look better, or, getting a midget to shut the doors as the storm comes in so the doors look bigger. I mean, just all kinds of tricks, and cinematic tricks and references. And so when I did when I did The Dentist, I'd just come off of that. And I think that influenced me a lot. I think it really, I couldn't even afford one day of a storyboard artist. So I had to do all my own storyboards. And what I did is I started storyboarding at least the first and last shots of every scene. So I knew how my transition would go. So I always knew what I should do with the camera to the first shot of the next scene. That's not something I ever did before. I used to just shoot the scenes and give it to the director, the editor, to kind of make sense out of it. I mean, I'd have an idea, but it wasn't that rigid. And the frames were rigid. We were in a little set. We built that set and didn't even have the money for all the furniture. Like I wanted a little kids play area, and it wasn't in the budget, right? And so I gave my credit card to the art director. They went to IKEA, bought all the furniture for the kids. We shot it, and then they took it back and got my money. That's how we were doing. That's how we shot that movie. Of course, this isn't no surprise to anybody who's made a cheap movie. I mean, but you would think, hey, Corbin Burnson, I don't know, all these actors, No, there's no money, and Pierre David was not about to bend on anything. So we did a lot of, there was a lot of that, but it meant that we were on this little set. There was nothing weird about it. It was all, the whole office was built, right? So you could move it because they're little rooms. You have to move a wall to be able to shoot. And everything had to be built according to what had to happen in the script. But I kind of was forced into trying to make the frame very rigid. To there's this kind of artistic or cineastic kind of idea of watching movies where you watch the frame, you watch the edges of the frame. It's like an art. If you paint or draw or something, it's really about the frame. It's like where do what do you do within that frame? There's a different feeling within a frame to different parts of it. And so I couldn't look up because we didn't have a ceiling. There was a lot of limitations. And so I tried to do things that would keep you in the story. And I know it was directly related to having spent a fucking year with Christoph Gans and his kind of mentality. That, for example, when the dog dead and we see the dog, which wasn't really a dog, it was a dead goat. We can go with that later, but I panned up from the dog, and then you see this fake cloud and an angel out of paper, and you find that you're inside the heaven room where everything is like, in the sky and clouds. And so to do that, I put the dog and a bush in the operatory, so I could just pan up with the dog and all of a sudden be on the sky, but you immediately know it's just a blue wall with a paper angel and cloud, and then you're in the dentist office. So that transition is something I never would have done before that. It wouldn't have occurred to me. Or just the way every transition was planned out, and even all the kind of looking out in the hall and somebody else looking out, and that was all kind of Hitchcockian kind of suspense type stuff, even though we were doing it kind of in a humorous way. But it's stuff that I wouldn't, if the movie had been able to be much weirder, it would have been no problem. I wouldn't have done any of that because I would have just focused on the weird stuff. But because it was so normal and it was such a traditional type of movie, I was forced into that, and I used Christoph's the inspiration I got from him to make the movie the way it was.
Yeah, the film, along with winning Best Special Effects at the 1996 Fanta Festival, also took home the jury grand prize from the Sweden Fantastic Film Festival. Did you enjoy the festival circus? Did you find it rewarding to win the grand jury prize?
I've always been skeptical of any of those prizes. I'm always glad to get it if I can. I've been on a lot of juries, so I know how it works. You see how the sausage is made. But I always liked the festivals. And I liked back then, especially in the 90s, before there were so many, now there's just tons of them. There didn't used to be any in the US. It was all kind of in Europe. But I loved it because the people who were making the festivals were just horror geeks. And they wanted to make movies, probably, and a lot of them went on to do it. But they were just horror geeks, and they go, well, let's have a festival. And then we can put up the movies we like, and we'll get the money, we'll bring over guests, people that we'd like to meet, right? And so in general, it was just so much fun. And you get to know, it's a circuit of people. As it developed, as they got much more established and everything, the big ones, which didn't start big, like the Brussels one is huge, and Sitges is huge in Spain. But they get so big, they're really almost a little corporate. They quit. I like the little ones, the ones that are just starting. It's kind of like if you started a festival in Delaware. I don't know if you can even do it these days now because there's so damn many festivals, right?
Yeah, right.
But if you and they're going to charge you to show the movies, and it just back then they didn't even charge. You just went and you just got to hang out with people in Sweden, and you got to go, learn the drinking songs. And if you went to Amsterdam back then, it was the only place you could smoke pot legally. It was it was it was a lot of fun. I just got back from a festival in South Korea. Um, and it's big, but it's still fun because you meet people that are in the game,
Yeah.
and making movies. I went through the 80s and 90s and 2000s. I was just making movies, movies, movies. And it was basically because I had to, I make low budget movies and the fees aren't very big. So you got to do it a lot to be able to support a family. I got 4 kids. But now, of course, my kids are grown up and everything. But but you get to see the people who are making these movies. The one I went to was all kind of based on Asian
Okay.
movies, and so I haven't seen them yet, but I've got links. I met the filmmakers who made. I don't know if you've heard of The Sadness.
Oh my God, yes, it's
Yep.
a crazy
Taiwanese movie.
Crazy movie. Yeah, we got a screener for that from Shutter.
Yeah, yeah, and he seems really. I mean, I really like him. He's somebody I could do business with. I mean, and plus, he's an American guy in
Hmm.
Thailand. And people who go to other countries to live, which I grew up outside of the U.S., so I've lived a lot outside, and I lived. I was in Spain. I've lived in Mexico and Canada and Spain and Indonesia and Italy, a lot of different countries making movies. And part of it is because I grew up outside of the country, so it kind of suits me. But I've always thought that, people who just sort of go where they're not from and and kind of get
Yeah.
along, there's just something a little different. It's just, I made one movie not in English. I produced a movie in Indonesia, no budget movie called Takut, Faces of Fear. And I used 5 different Indonesian directors, writers, producers. It's made for no money, all Indonesian language. And it was just a lot of fun because you really kind of see what a movie's about when you're distance yourself from everything familiar.
Right.
And I think that's very impressive. There's another guy there. His name is Ken. What's his name? Ken Scenes. He made a movie called Sissy.
Haven't seen that yet. Not familiar with that
Sissy.
one.
Yeah, and that one looks really good. It's got a lot of good reviews. I've got a link to that. I got a lot of.
We got a lot of catching up to do.
I come back from the festival. I come back from the festivals. And these are all Korean or Taiwanese. But it's amazing because when you look at those Asian movies, you can find some real interesting stuff.
Definitely.
So anyway, I do like the festivals, and I enjoy seeing the people who are kind of all involved. And a lot of people, they're just got their first movie or their second one, and they're just really, really scrambling, to get it going. It's a tough racket,
Yeah, definitely.
and unfortunately, most people don't pay enough attention to the business of it because if you can finance it, you can have any job. You don't have to go hat in hand and ask somebody to accept you into a club that you probably don't even want to be in, really.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, with I mean, no disrespect by this. You know, we're fans of the movie and fans of yours and the work you've done. But with the shit show that the production for The Dentist was, were you surprised how popular the movie became and that it got a sequel? And
I
was The Dentist
was,
two
yeah.
a better experience for you?
Well, no, but the dentist, yes, I was really surprised because I was pretty. I had come off of Crying Freeman, and that was a much bigger budget. It was like $15 million, and back then that was pretty good. And it was, I never got that kind of money. You know, I was doing movies for a million or under,
Right.
or 1.5. You know, that was, you know, the dentist was like, I think it was like 700 grand or something, which today would be kind of like a $200,000 movie. You know, 250, 300, 400, you know, like that. I mean, it was really tight. Let's put it that way. And so, but I needed the job, and I did have an opportunity. I had talked to, coming off of Crying Freeman, my producing partner on it was Samuel Hadida, kind of a famous producer that has a distribution company in France. It's probably the third or fourth biggest distributor in France. And this was a co-production between Japanese. The Japanese producer was Takai and Chise, same ones from Necronomicon. And Taka is the guy who created J-Horror, The Ring, The Grudge, Dark Water,
Okay.
all those movies he produced. He sort of created that whole thing. Um, and when I came back, all of a sudden I didn't have a job, and I hadn't been living. I'd been out of LA for a year or more, and I called up Sammy and said, "Man, I need a job." And he said, "Well, listen, I'm co-producing this movie called Freeway, and it's in co-production with I think it was Oliver Stone's company and all this, and and you can be my producer on it." And he would pay me the same as what I would have gotten for the dentist. And all my friends told me, "Don't do the dentist. Don't work with Pierre David's going to eat you up and spit you out. You know, he's really tough and all this." And I thought, well, and then I had one weekend to make the decision. Right? It was Friday night. And if I wanted, I could either take Freeway and all of a sudden be dealing with, you know, Oliver Stone's company and a bit bigger of a picture with a high profile. And was it Reese Witherspoon, I think, did it? And or I could do this dipshit little dentist movie with Pierre David, but I would be casting on Monday, right? So, you know, I shook hands with the devil and did the. I thought, you know what? I want to be doing casting. I want to. I don't care. You know, I've made a lot of movies. I think I can handle a kind of hard ass producer. What the fuck, you know? And so that was why I did it, and it was so. It was very very difficult, um, but and it was like we were rewriting all the time. I worked with Pierre David's one of his um, assistants named Sherry Bryant, and she was just really invaluable for me because we had to redo the whole script, and we were rewriting the script while we were going as we were casting, and it was terrible. At one point, it wasn't terrible in the sense that it was it was terrible because I wasn't really on the same page as the producer, as Pierre, and I didn't get to sign the checks, and so he had certain criteria, and And at one point, it even got to be on a ridiculous level that we were so tight for money. It was, I could tell that we were very tight for money because our entire crew was either female or foreign. And back then, in the 90s, you didn't see a lot of women on the crew. I mean, they would be in makeup and wardrobe, right? But you didn't see them like being grips or being DPs or being, first ADs. You didn't see that. They would be maybe in the office. They'd be the coordinator. You'd see it there. But this movie was so cheap that women had to take less money. So a ton of our crew was female. And then the other part is foreign people in Hollywood, like French and Italians and stuff that are here, that they have a work permit probably, but they're not going to necessarily, they will have to take less money. So we really had a crew that reflected that budget. And even at one point, we're shooting on film, you got to remember. And film is very expensive. It's not like today when you turn on your 4K and you just run it, right? Run it through. You run it through rehearsals. You just run the goddamn thing because it doesn't cost a nickel to record tape or hard drive. Well, back to record film, 35 millimeter film, every foot that you use, you had to buy that foot of film. You had to you have to get it developed. You have to get it printed. I mean, it's expensive. So you didn't want to, you wouldn't say shoot the rehearsal. You want to shoot when you're ready to shoot. Well, at one point, Pierre was so upset that that we were using too much film, he said. And the line producer came to me very embarrassed because this was such a ridiculous thing. And he said, listen, Pierre said that you have an allotment of so many feet of film every hour. And when you reach that allotment, you're cut off. so the thing is, it was like, you got to hurry up. But to hurry up, what you do is you shoot the rehearsal because you could use it. But if you can't shoot film, you can't shoot the rehearsal. And so it was so ridiculous. I just said, hey, man, tell me when to stop and I'll go sit down till the next hour. I mean, it was really ridiculous. But it wasn't that the production itself, the restrictions were great, and of course something like the film thing, which he never followed through on because it's so stupid. That was goofy, but the shoot itself was it wasn't a shit show. It was well organized. It was well scheduled. It was very professional and not as stressful as a lot of movies I've done. It was we shot it. Now, once it was done and we were cutting it, and I did get my editor that I had been using since Return of the Living Dead 3, Chris Roth, who has edited, I think he's edited a lot of movies for me, and he did one of his famous movies is Killer Clowns from Outer Space. You probably know that one. Yeah. But he did Return of the Living Dead 3 for me, and he was cutting it, and it was by that time I was in Florida shooting this pilot for a Tarzan TV show at Disney.
Wow.
It was just awful, and I was coming back to to do the sound with Alan Howarth, who's one of the unsung heroes. Alan Howarth is, you probably know him because he co-wrote the music for
Yeah.
most of John
Yep,
Carpenter's
the thing.
movies. Yeah, and he was the first guy who did sound design. He's a guy that nobody knows about, but to me, he's like one of the greats, one of the great people. You should have him on your podcast because this guy has been
Oh,
there,
we'd love to have him.
and has done all this great. Yeah, and he did the entire package for the dentist. We were so cheap. I flew from Florida, Orlando, back to L.A. on a Friday. When at that time he was working out of this little warehouse that he lived in, and he did. And I left on Monday, and during that time, we on a keyboard, an electric keyboard, we picked out the music for the whole movie. Kind of sketched up the music for the whole movie, and then he did the whole sound package. He mixed it. He did the sound effects because it was real important to me to have the drills sound good. Have the sound of the whir of the drill and the grind of the drill, which I thought was what we were really selling with this movie. So he was, but he did it for no money. It's just amazing. So it was definitely tight. And when I saw the movie, it didn't convince me. When I saw it put together, and then Pierre David actually came up with a couple editing fixes, structural fixes that I thought really, really helped the movie. And that's why I say I don't think it would be the movie I don't think it would have worked the way it does if it wasn't for Pierre David. In spite of all the kind of negative things I've said about him, and I don't mean that, I think he was I think he contributed greatly, and he really, to the extent that the movie works, you have to give him credit. But yeah, it was a total surprise to me that it worked the way it did. And it wasn't until it started playing and it had real success, especially like in Europe, like in France, it was like a top movie for a while. I mean, it was a movie that appealed to a much greater audience than any of my movies ever had, except for say Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, right? It was it went beyond the horror audience. And so I think that's
That's a winner.
fantastic, right?
And from what I understand, part of it you shot at somebody's residential home in Los Angeles. How is that working at somebody's house?
Well, people rent their houses out for movies all the time. They put them on there's a listing service, and if you can get people to shoot at your house, you should do it. Corbin, just some years ago, he and his wife, who's also an actress, flip houses where they did before the pandemic. And so he'll buy a house and fix it up, and he's got the connections to get productions to come in and rent it. It's good money. You can get it. It's I wish I could get a production. I have rented my house for productions. I rented it for a low budget movie called Reborn, kind of a electric Carrie that a partner of mine produced or executive produced, and they shot the whole movie here. It really, Barbara Crampton's in it, Ray Dong Chong, or something. What's the Chaz Mono? I don't know who the other people are, but they shot it while I was still here. I just didn't let them go into my office or my bedroom. And I would honestly, it was like a dream when when I started making movies, I'd have these dreams that I was always on a set or in a movie theater. And this was like being in a dream. I would be like talking with you, but if I open the door, people are carrying lights around, you know, and they're setting up a shot, and there's all this bright light coming in. And in the backyard, the extras are eating snacks, you know.
That's hilarious.
It's good money if you can get it.
Thanks to all the horror hounds and smokers out there for tuning in. Thank you to Brian Yuzna for joining us this week. And I guess early thank you again, since we're going to have a part 2 of this. So thank you again for next week, which I'll thank you again in the wrap-up. Anyway, so next week we're going to have part 2. We're also going to have a review for Prey.
Prey.
P-R-E-Y. P-R-A-Y.
The new Predator film, and I can't fucking wait.
I'm excited because it looks good. We haven't had a good Predator movie in a while. But I also got hyped for Scream, and I was a big goddamn winter. So I got tempered expectations for this.
But you don't have to pay to see it at theaters. You get to sit at home and watch it on Hulu.
So we'll have that for you next week as well. Make sure to follow us online: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube. I think I got them all in there somewhere. We also have a Discord somewhere. Join that. I'm always posting the link for that. But all those handles are at HighOnHorror420. You can send us an email at highonhorror420@gmail.com. Check out our website, highonhorror.com. You can sign up for our newsletter. We'll send you our guest announcements and our latest episodes. You can also check out our Patreon. There's so much shit online these days, right?
Right, but also, you didn't mention that next week for our part 2, we're going to be reviewing Bride of Reanimator.
Oh, shit.
So we have a Bride of Reanimator review
I feel
coming,
like all
and
I
a
really...
Prey review coming. So 2 reviews next week, plus the final part of Brian's interview.
Stop interrupting me when I'm interrupting you. I didn't even think I needed to say a movie. I just had to say that Brian Yuzna is going to be here again next week, and I figured that was enough. But yes, Bride of Reanimator. I think I covered all of our social.
Yeah.
Let's get the fuck out of here. Catch you later.
Bye, everybody.